The wheels kicked up red dust that settled on everything. Lena's dark traveling dress, the wooden planks of the sidewalk, the faces of the people who'd stopped what they were doing to stare. She'd expected curiosity. What she hadn't expected was the weight of it, the way it pressed against her skin like a physical thing. The driver dropped her bag at her feet without ceremony. "Red Hollow," he said, as if she might have missed it. "Thank you." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. He tipped his hat, but there was something in his expression, pity, maybe, or warning. Then he was back on the coach, and the horses were pulling away, and Lena was standing alone in the center of a town that looked like it had been carved out of rock and stubbornness. The general store loomed to her right. Through its window, she could see a woman in a flour-dusted apron, not even pretending to work, just watching. A man in a suit stood outside the land office, arms crossed. Two boys sat on a fence rail, whispering to each other. Lena picked up her bag. It wasn't heavy, everything she owned fit inside it, but her arms felt weak. She'd barely eaten since yesterday morning. The journey had been long, and fear had a way of killing appetite. "Miss Hartwell?" She turned. The man who'd spoken was thin and tall, with wire-rimmed glasses that caught the afternoon light. He looked like he spent more time with books than people. "Yes. I'm Thomas Mercer. Mr. Vance asked me to meet you. He's, occupied at the moment. Ranch business." Of course he was. The man who'd sent for a wife couldn't be bothered to meet her himself. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she'd known what this was when she'd answered the advertisement. This wasn't romance. This was survival dressed up as matrimony. "I understand," she said. Mercer shifted his weight. "I've arranged a room for you at Mrs. Bosworth's boarding house, just until things are settled." "That's kind of you." "It's nothing." But the way he said it suggested otherwise. He picked up her bag before she could protest and started walking. Lena followed, aware of every pair of eyes that tracked their movement down the street. The boarding house sat at the edge of town, a two-story structure that had probably been white once but had faded to the color of old bone. Mrs. Bosworth herself answered the door. A woman built like a barrel, with gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face. "So this is the mail-order bride," she said. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. A statement of fact. "Lena Hartwell, ma'am." "You can call me Mrs. Bosworth. Everyone does." She stepped aside. "Room's upstairs, second door. Supper's at 6. Don't be late." The room was small and spare, a bed with an iron frame, a washstand, a single window that overlooked the street. Lena set her bag on the bed and sat beside it, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the journey. She'd made it. Against every doubt, every fear, every voice that had told her she was insane, she'd actually done it. She'd left Baltimore. Left the house on Markham Street with its nice furniture and its locked doors, and the man who called himself her guardian and acted like her jailer. Her aunt's husband. The man who'd taken her in after her parents died, who'd presented himself to the world as generous and dutiful, and who'd shown his true face only when the doors were closed and the curtains drawn. She touched her left wrist without thinking, feeling the ghost of bruises that had finally faded. Never again. Whatever waited for her here, whatever Caleb Vance turned out to be, it couldn't be worse than what she'd left behind. She met him the next morning. Mercer came to collect her just after breakfast, leading her to a small office above the land registry. Caleb Vance stood by the window, looking out at the street, and didn't turn when they entered. He was taller than she'd expected, broader through the shoulders. His hair was dark and slightly too long, and when he finally did turn to face her, she saw eyes the color of winter sky, pale blue, almost gray, and completely unreadable. "Miss Hartwell?" His voice was low, rough-edged. "Mr. Vance?" They stood there, taking each other's measure. The advertisement had been sparse on details. Rancher seeking wife. Must be honest, hardworking, and willing to build a life on difficult land. No illusions of romance. Reply if you understand what's being offered. She'd understood perfectly. And apparently so had he, because he didn't try to dress this up as something it wasn't. "I'll be plain with you," Caleb said. "I need a wife because the work is too much for one person, and because a man alone gets talked about in ways that make business harder. You need a situation that gets you out of whatever you're running from. That sound about right?" Lena felt her spine straighten. "Yes." "Good. Honesty's the only thing that'll make this work." He moved to the desk, picked up a piece of paper. I've had Mercer draw up a contract. It spells out what's expected. From both of us. You'll have your own room, your own space. What happens between us beyond the legal arrangement is something we'll figure out as we go, if we figure it out at all. But you'll be protected, you'll be provided for, and I won't raise a hand to you, ever. The last part landed with unexpected force. Lena's throat tightened. Why did you send for me? She asked. Specifically, there must have been other responses. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she'd ask. You were the only one who didn't lie. The others wrote about looking for love, for partnership, for all these things that have nothing to do with what I offered. You wrote 3 sentences, said you needed a way out and you'd work hard for it. That was enough. And if this doesn't work, she struggled for the right words. If we find we can't stand each other, then we'll deal with it. But we try first, for at least a year. After that, if you want to leave, I'll make sure you have enough to start somewhere else. It was more than fair, more than she'd hoped for. And yet something about his careful distance, his measured words made her chest ache. This wasn't what she dreamed of as a girl. But those dreams belonged to someone else now, someone who still believed the world was safe. All right, she said, I'll sign. The wedding took place 3 days later in the same office where they'd met. Judge Holloway performed the ceremony, a man with a red face and whiskey on his breath, and Mercer served as witness. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. Afterward, Caleb drove her out to the ranch in a wagon that had seen better years. They didn't speak much. The land stretched out around them, vast and unforgiving, all red rock and stubborn grass and sky that went on forever. The house appeared gradually, rising out of the landscape like it had grown there. It was larger than she'd expected. 2 stories, built from local stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Behind it stood the barn, the corral, and beyond that, land that rolled away toward distant mesas. It's not much, Caleb said as he helped her down from the wagon. It's more than I had yesterday. He glanced at her, and for just a second she saw something shift in his face. Then it was gone, and he was reaching for her bag. I'll show you around. The inside of the house was clean but sparse. Functional furniture, few decorations, the kind of space a man lived in when he didn't expect company. He showed her the kitchen, the main room with its stone fireplace, the stairs leading up. Your room's here. He opened a door off the upstairs hallway. Mine's at the other end. Washrooms between. The room was bigger than the one at the boarding house, with a real wardrobe and a window that faced east. Someone, probably Caleb, had put fresh linens on the bed. Thank you, Lena said. He nodded, already turning away. I've got work to see to. Make yourself at home. Food's in the kitchen if you're hungry. Then he was gone, his boots heavy on the stairs. And Lena was alone in her new room in her new house with her new husband, who felt like a stranger with a particularly formal set of manners. She sat on the bed and let herself feel it. The strangeness, the fear, the dizzy relief of being somewhere her aunt's husband couldn't reach. Then she stood up, unpacked her bag, and went downstairs to figure out what needed doing. Kids. The first week passed in a strange rhythm. Caleb was up before dawn, working until well after dark. Lena threw herself into the house, scrubbing floors that didn't really need scrubbing, organizing cupboards, learning where everything lived. They ate meals together in near silence, careful and polite, like diplomats from neighboring countries. On the 8th day, Lena walked out to the barn where Caleb was repairing a fence rail. I need to go into town, she said, for supplies. He straightened, wiped sweat from his forehead. I can take you Saturday. I can go myself. I saw the wagon. You know how to handle a team? My father had horses. I'm not helpless. Something flashed in his eyes. Not anger, but something sharper. Didn't say you were. Then I'll take the wagon tomorrow. He studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, just be careful. Town's got opinions about us. I noticed. It'll get worse before it gets better. I'm not afraid of gossip, Mr. Vance. Caleb, he said, you're my wife. Might as well use my name. It was the first personal thing he'd said to her. Lena felt something warm unfold in her chest, unexpected and dangerous. Caleb, she repeated, and you can call me Lena. He nodded again, then went back to his fence. But as she walked back to the house, she could feel his gaze following her, and for the first time since arriving, she wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Red Hollow's main street was busier than she'd expected. Lena tied up the wagon outside the general store and stepped down, immediately aware of the conversations that stopped, the heads that turned. She kept her spine straight and her expression calm as she walked inside. The store smelled of coffee and leather and dust. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man with a suspicious face. "Help you?" He didn't quite make it a question. "I need flour, sugar, salt, and coffee. Also thread if you have it in dark blue." He didn't move. "You're Vance's wife." "I am. Came awful quick, the wedding." Lena met his gaze steadily. "Is there a law about how long it should take?" "Just seems convenient for both of you." She felt heat rise in her face but kept her voice level. "Are you going to sell me supplies, or should I try the next town over?" For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then he shrugged and started pulling items from the shelves. "Your money's as good as anyone's, for now." Lena paid, took her purchases, and walked out. The whole exchange had been watched by at least 6 other people, and she could feel the gossip starting before she'd even reached the wagon. "Mrs. Vance?" She turned. A woman stood there, young, maybe Lena's age, with red hair and kind eyes. "I'm Sarah Coltrane. My husband runs the livery. It's nice to meet you." "I wanted to say—" Sarah glanced around, lowered her voice. "Don't let them get to you. People here, they're hard on newcomers, especially women. They'll test you. Thank you for the warning. It's not just a warning, it's advice. If you fold, they'll never respect you. But if you stand firm—" She smiled. "Well, then you might have a chance." Lena felt her throat tighten with unexpected gratitude. "I'll remember that." Sarah squeezed her arm briefly, then walked away, and Lena climbed back onto the wagon feeling slightly less alone. But Sarah had been right about the testing. It started small. Women who'd turn away when Lena greeted them, men who'd fall silent when she passed. Then it grew. She overheard whispers. Where did she come from? What's she running from? Why would Vance marry someone like that? Someone like that. As if they knew. As if they could see the truth of her past written on her skin. One afternoon, she found a note tucked under the door of the wagon while she was in the dry goods store. "Go back where you came from. We don't need your kind here." Lena stared at it, feeling cold spread through her chest. Then she crumpled it up, threw it in the street, and finished her shopping. That night, at dinner, Caleb noticed her silence. Something happened in town? She hesitated. They'd maintained such careful distance from each other. Did he really want to know? "People are talking," she said finally. "They always do. About me specifically. About us. About why you'd marry someone you don't know." Caleb set down his fork. "What are they saying? Does it matter?" "If it's bothering you, it matters." The gentleness in his voice caught her off guard. She looked up and found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "They think I'm running from something criminal, or that I'm after your money, or that there's something wrong with me, that you were desperate enough to take anyone." "And what do you think?" "I think they don't know anything about either of us, and they've decided that gives them the right to make up stories." Caleb leaned back in his chair. "You want me to say something to them?" "No." The word came out fast and firm. "I don't need you to defend me. I needed to say it out loud." He nodded slowly. "All right. But Lena, for what it's worth, you're not what they're saying, and anyone who bothers to look would see that." It was the kindest thing he'd said to her. Lena felt her eyes sting and looked down at her plate before he could notice. "Thank you," she said quietly. They finished dinner in silence, but it was different now, warmer somehow, like a door had opened between them just a crack. The trouble came to a head 2 weeks later. Lena was in the general store again when Martha Holloway, the judge's wife, walked in with 2 other women. They didn't acknowledge Lena at first, just talked among themselves in voices clearly meant to be overheard. "Of course, you never really know where these women come from," Martha said. "Could be running from the law. Could be worse." "I heard she was a dancer," one of the others said, "in one of those theaters back east." I heard she had a child out of wedlock and gave it away. Lena's hand stilled on the bolt of fabric she'd been examining. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to walk out, to avoid confrontation. That was what she'd always done before, made herself small, invisible, safe. But something in her had changed. Maybe it was the distance from Baltimore. Maybe it was Caleb's quiet respect. Maybe it was just that she'd already lost everything once, and these women had nothing left to take from her. She turned around. "Excuse me, Mrs. Holloway." The three women looked at her with identical expressions of false surprise. "Yes, dear? I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. If you have questions about my past, you're welcome to ask me directly instead of speculating in public." Martha's face went red. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Of course you do. You're discussing whether I'm a criminal or a fallen woman or both. So let me save you the trouble of guessing." Lena stepped closer and was gratified to see Martha step back. "I'm not running from the law. I've never worked in a theater, as a dancer, or anything else. I don't have children. What I am is a woman who made a choice to come here and build a life, and what I was before is none of your business." "Well, I never—" "And one more thing." Lena's voice didn't rise, but it carried. "If you're going to gossip about me, at least have the courage to do it to my face instead of hiding behind concern for the community. It's cowardly, and it's beneath you." She turned and walked out before Martha could respond, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Behind her, she heard shocked whispers, but she didn't look back. She made it to the wagon before her hands started shaking. She climbed up, took the reins, and drove out of town with her head high and her stomach in knots, not sure if she'd just made things better or infinitely worse. Bummes. Caleb was working in the corral when she got back. He took one look at her face and set down the rope he'd been coiling. "What happened?" "I confronted Martha Holloway." His eyebrows rose. "About?" "About spreading rumors. About me." Lena climbed down from the wagon, her legs unsteady. "I probably shouldn't have. I probably just made everything worse. But I couldn't just stand there and let her—" She stopped, surprised by the pressure behind her eyes. She wasn't going to cry. She refused to cry. Caleb crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He didn't touch her, but he stood close, solid and real. "What did you say to her?" Lena told him, word for word. When she finished, she braced herself for anger or disappointment or a lecture about keeping the peace. Instead, Caleb laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that hadn't been used in years, but it was genuine. Lena stared at him. "You told Martha Holloway she was a coward?" Yes." "To her face?" "Yes." He shook his head, something like admiration in his eyes. "That woman's been running this town through fear and judgment for 20 years. I'd have paid money to see her expression." "You're not angry?" "Angry? Lena, I'm—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm impressed. Most people kowtow to her. You stood your ground. I might have made things worse for us. Or you might have shown them you're not someone who can be pushed around." He studied her face. "You all right?" I don't know. I feel like I might shake apart." "Come on." He gestured toward the house. "I'll make coffee. You can sit down before you fall down." In the kitchen, Caleb moved with surprising ease, measuring coffee, stoking the stove. Lena sank into a chair and watched him, this stranger she'd married, who was maybe becoming less of a stranger. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Go ahead." "Why do you live out here, so far from town, I mean? You could have a place closer, make things easier." He was quiet for a moment, measuring his answer. "I don't fit well with people. Never have. After the war, I came back and found I fit even worse. Out here, I don't have to pretend I'm something I'm not." "The war?" 4 years, infantry, saw things that—" He stopped, poured coffee into 2 cups. "Doesn't matter now. Point is, I understand wanting distance from the past. That's why I didn't ask about yours." Lena wrapped her hands around the cup he handed her, grateful for its warmth. "My parents died when I was 16. Fever took them both inside a week. I went to live with my aunt and her husband in Baltimore." She paused, choosing her words. "He was not a kind man. When my aunt passed last year, I knew I had to leave. Your advertisement seemed like an answer." "Did he hurt you?" Caleb's voice had gone very quiet. Yes. If he comes here, he won't. He's not the type to chase after someone who's already gone. Too much effort. She took a sip of coffee, feeling the heat of it steady her. I'm not asking you to fix it or avenge it or anything like that. It's just the truth. You said honesty was all we had. Caleb sat down across from her. Thank you for telling me. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee as the afternoon light slanted through the windows. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it wasn't uncomfortable either. It was just real. Finally, Caleb spoke. The town council meets tomorrow night. I usually don't go, but I think I might this time. Why? Because I think it's time I reminded them who I am and who you are, my wife, which means if they've got a problem with you, they've got a problem with me. Lena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his face that made her chest ache. He meant it. This man who barely knew her, who owed her nothing, was willing to stand up to a whole town on her behalf. You don't have to do that, she said softly. I know, but I'm going to anyway. He stood, carried his cup to the sink. Because Martha Holloway is not the only coward in Red Hollow, and it's past time someone said so. Batik. The next evening, Caleb put on a clean shirt and rode into town. Lena watched him go with her stomach in knots. He told her to stay home, that this was something he needed to do alone, and she'd agreed despite every instinct telling her to fight alongside him. He came back late, after dark. Lena was on the porch, unable to settle to anything. How did it go? She asked as he tied up his horse. About like you'd expect. Half the council thinks we're a scandal. The other half doesn't care as long as I pay my debts and keep my cattle off their land. What did you say? He climbed the porch steps, stood looking out at the dark land. I told them my wife was a decent woman who deserved their respect. I told them the gossip was going to stop, and anyone who had a problem with how I run my life could take it up with me directly, instead of talking behind our backs. And Judge Holloway said I was out of line. His wife had every right to express her concerns about newcomers. Lena's heart sank. So nothing changed. I didn't say that. Caleb turned to face her. Owen McCarthy, he runs the bank. He stood up after Holloway spoke, said he'd known me for 8 years, and if I vouched for you, that was good enough for him. Then Sarah Coltrane's husband said the same. By the end, about half the room was on our side. Half isn't everyone. Half is more than I've ever had before. He looked at her with something that might have been warmth. You're changing things, Lena, whether you mean to or not. She didn't know what to say to that. Instead, she asked, Are you hungry? There's stew left. Starving. They went inside together, and for the first time since arriving in Red Hollow, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place where she could stand her ground and not disappear. Titoking. But peace never lasted long on the frontier. 4 days later, Lena woke to pounding on the front door. It was barely dawn, the sky just starting to lighten. She threw on a robe and hurried downstairs, reaching the door just as Caleb emerged from his room, pulling on his shirt. Owen McCarthy stood on the porch, his face grave. Caleb, you need to come into town, now. What's wrong? There's a man asking about your wife. Says he's her legal guardian. Says she ran away and he's come to bring her home. The bottom dropped out of Lena's world. No, it wasn't possible. He wouldn't. He couldn't have. But even as she thought it, she knew she was wrong. Of course he would. Of course he'd come. Not because he cared, but because she'd defied him, and men like Victor Hartwell didn't tolerate defiance. Caleb looked at her, and whatever he saw in her face made his expression harden. Tell him she's not going anywhere, he said to Owen. He's got papers, Caleb. Legal documents. I don't care if he's got a letter from the president. She's my wife now, and he's got no claim on her. That's not how the law sees it. She's under 21, isn't she? Lena's voice came out barely above a whisper. I turned 20 last month. Then, legally, until you're 21, your guardian has authority. The hell he does! Caleb's voice cut through like a blade. She's married. That supersedes guardianship. Owen looked uncomfortable. Judge Holloway's already said he'll hear the case. This afternoon. You both need to be there. After he left, Lena sank onto the stairs, her legs refusing to hold her. Caleb crouched in front of her. Lena, Look at me. She forced her eyes to meet his. Is this the man who hurt you? Yes. Then he's not taking you. I don't care what papers he has or what the judge says. You're not going back to him. Caleb, if the law can go to hell. His hands were gentle on her shoulders, but his voice was iron. You came here for protection. You've got it. Whatever happens today, you stay with me. Understand? Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Something fierce and terrified and grateful was building in her chest, too big for words. I need to get dressed, she said finally. If we're going to face him, I need to look strong, Caleb finished. You need to look strong, because you are. She wanted to believe him. As she climbed the stairs to her room, she tried to summon every bit of courage she had left. Because Victor Hartwell was coming, and this time she wasn't running. This time she was going to fight. Lena's hands shook as she buttoned her best dress, a deep green wool that had belonged to her mother. She'd kept it wrapped in paper at the bottom of her bag, saving it for something important. A funeral, maybe, or a wedding that felt like one. Now she was wearing it to face the man who'd made her life a cage. In the mirror, her reflection looked pale but composed. She pinned her hair back, each movement deliberate, buying herself time to breathe. Downstairs, she could hear Caleb moving through the house, his footsteps heavy and purposeful. When she came down, he was loading his rifle. You won't need that, she said, though her voice wavered. Probably not. He checked the mechanism anyway, but I'm bringing it. They rode into town in the wagon, side by side, neither speaking. The morning was clear and cold, the kind of day that made the landscape look sharp-edged and unforgiving. Lena kept her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Tell me about him, Caleb said finally. Victor, I need to know what we're walking into. Lena took a breath. He's careful. Everything he does looks reasonable from the outside. He'll present himself as concerned, protective. He'll have documents, references, probably letters from people in Baltimore vouching for his character. And underneath? Underneath, he's a man who thinks people are property, especially women, especially me. She looked at Caleb. He won't expect you to stand against him. Men like Victor, they understand each other. They make arrangements. Caleb's jaw tightened. Then he doesn't understand me at all. Red Hollow's main street was busier than usual. Word had spread. Of course it had. A legal dispute, a woman's reputation, a stranger from back east with claims and papers. It was better than theater. The courthouse sat at the end of the street, a stolid brick building that served double duty as the town hall. People were already gathering on its steps, pretending they had business inside but really just wanting to watch. Caleb helped Lena down from the wagon. His hand at her elbow was steady, grounding. Together they walked through the crowd, and Lena kept her chin up, kept her gaze forward, kept moving even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Inside, the courtroom was small and stuffy, with benches for spectators and a raised platform where Judge Holloway presided. The judge was already seated, looking self-important in his black robes. Martha Holloway sat in the front row, her expression smug. And there, standing near the judge's bench, was Victor Hartwell. He looked exactly as Lena remembered, tall, well-dressed, with silver threading through his dark hair. Distinguished, people would say. Trustworthy. He had the kind of face that inspired confidence, which was precisely what made him dangerous. His eyes found her, and he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Lena, my dear, thank goodness. I've been so worried. She said nothing. Caleb's hand found the small of her back, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Mr. Vance, I presume? Victor extended his hand. Caleb didn't take it. State your business, Caleb said. Victor's smile thinned. I'm here to collect my ward. Lena is under my legal guardianship until her 21st birthday. Her departure from Baltimore was precipitous and unauthorized. I have a duty to ensure her welfare. Her welfare, Caleb repeated, his voice flat. Precisely. I'm sure you understand as a man of property yourself. We have responsibilities to those in our care. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. If we could proceed, Mr. Hartwell has presented documents establishing his guardianship. The question before us is whether Mrs. Vance's marriage supersedes that guardianship, given that she's not yet of legal age. She's my wife, Caleb said. That's all the law needs to know. Actually, the law is quite specific about the rights of guardians, Victor began. I don't care what the law says. She's not going with you. Mr. Vance? Judge Holloway's voice carried a warning. We will conduct this proceeding with proper decorum, or I'll have you removed from this courtroom. Lena felt Caleb's muscles tense beside her. She touched his arm, a light pressure, and felt him force himself to stillness. Perhaps, Victor said smoothly, we should hear from Lena herself. My dear, why don't you tell the judge about our home in Baltimore? About the care and comfort you enjoyed there? Every eye in the room turned to her. This was the moment. She could feel the weight of it, not just her future, but something larger, the kind of choice that defined what came after. She stepped forward. I won't, she said clearly. Victor blinked. I beg your pardon? I won't describe my life in Baltimore, because anything I say, you'll twist. You'll make it sound like I was ungrateful, confused, hysterical. You're very good at that. Lena, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset. I'm done. She turned to Judge Holloway. Your Honor, I came to Red Hollow of my own free will. I married Mr. Vance of my own free will. I have no intention of returning to Baltimore or to my guardian's house. If the law says he still has authority over me, then the law is wrong. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Martha Holloway leaned forward, eyes bright with scandal. Judge Holloway frowned. Mrs. Vance, your feelings on the matter are noted, but they're not feelings. They're facts. Lena's voice didn't rise, but it carried. Victor Hartwell is not a kind guardian. He is not concerned for my welfare. He's here because I defied him by leaving, and he can't tolerate that. These are serious accusations, Victor said, his voice hardening. I've done nothing but provide for this girl since her parents' death. I took her in when she had nothing. You took me in because my aunt begged you to, Lena cut in. And after she died, you made it clear that I was an obligation you resented. You also made it clear that there were expectations, ways I could show my gratitude. The room went very quiet. Victor's face flushed. How dare you suggest? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating what happened. Lena's hands were clenched at her sides, but her voice stayed level. You told me that a woman alone needs protection, that I should be grateful for your attention, that if I was smart, I'd accept what you were offering before you lost patience. This is slander, Victor turned to the judge. Your Honor, you can see she's been influenced, probably by this man she's married, a young woman, confused, making wild claims. I have scars, Lena said quietly. The room froze. I have scars, she repeated, louder now. From the times I wasn't grateful enough. From the times I tried to leave and was brought back. I can show them to you if you need proof. She started to reach for her sleeve, but Caleb caught her hand. When she looked at him, his face was carved from stone, his eyes burning. You don't have to, he said, so low only she could hear. You don't owe them that. But she did. She could see it in Judge Holloway's face, the doubt, the calculation. Men like him needed evidence. They needed proof before they'd believe a woman over a well-dressed gentleman with proper papers. I do, she whispered back. Then, to the room, Your Honor, if you need to see, that won't be necessary. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Thomas Mercer stood there, holding a sheaf of papers. He walked forward, his thin frame vibrating with tension. I took the liberty, he said, addressing the judge, of sending some inquiries to Baltimore, to the courthouse there and to several neighbors on Markham Street. Victor's face went pale. You had no right. I had every right. When a man shows up claiming guardianship over a woman who clearly doesn't want to go with him, it seemed prudent to verify his character. Mercer set the papers on the judge's bench. These are sworn statements from 3 separate households. All of them describe hearing disturbances from the Hartwell residence. Crying, shouting. One witness saw Mrs. Vance, then Miss Hartwell, with visible bruising on her arms and face. Lies, Victor spat. Neighbors with grudges. One of them is a pastor, Mercer said quietly. Another is a physician who treated Miss Hartwell twice for injuries she claimed were from falls. He noted at the time that the injuries were inconsistent with her explanation. Judge Holloway picked up the papers, reading in silence. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Hartwell, these are serious allegations. They're fabrications. This is a conspiracy. The documents appear legitimate. They're notarized and witnessed. The judge's expression was hard to read. Mr. Mercer, you're certain of their authenticity? I am, Your Honor. I can provide the names of the Baltimore officials who supplied them if you wish to verify independently. Victor's face had gone from pale to flushed, his composure cracking. This is absurd. I came here as a courtesy to retrieve my ward, and I'm being accused of... He stopped, seeming to realize he was making it worse. Judge Holloway set the papers down. Mr. Hartwell, even if your guardianship was legitimate, and these documents cast serious doubt on that, Mrs. Vance's marriage does in fact supersede it. The law is clear on that point. A married woman is under her husband's authority, not her former guardian's. She's not of age. She's married. That changes her legal status. You have no claim here. The judge's voice was firm. Furthermore, given these allegations, I'm disinclined to give your petition any further consideration. This hearing is concluded. Mrs. Vance will remain with her husband. For a moment, no one moved. Then Victor turned to Lena, and the mask finally dropped. The fury in his eyes was naked, raw. You'll regret this, he said, low enough that only she and Caleb could hear. You think you're safe out here. You think this frontier marriage protects you? You're still the same worthless girl you were in Baltimore. He'll figure that out soon enough. Caleb moved so fast Lena barely saw it. One moment he was beside her. The next, he had Victor by the collar, slamming him back against the wall. You're done talking to my wife, Caleb said, his voice deadly quiet. You're done being in the same room with her. You're going to leave Red Hollow today, and if you ever come back, if you ever send another letter or make another threat, I will handle it. And I won't be as civilized as this courtroom. Do we understand each other? Victor tried to pull free, but Caleb's grip didn't budge. You can't. I can. And I will. Caleb leaned in closer. I've killed men for less than what you've done to her. Don't test me. Mr. Vance! Judge Holloway's voice cracked like a whip. Release him immediately. Caleb held on for one more second, making his point. Then he let go, stepping back. Victor straightened his coat with shaking hands, trying to reclaim his dignity. This isn't over, he said, but it sounded hollow. Yeah, it is. Caleb took Lena's hand. Come on. We're leaving. They walked out of the courtroom together, through the crowd of gawking spectators, into the bright, cold morning. Lena's legs felt like water, but she kept walking, kept breathing, kept putting one foot in front of the other. Behind them, she could hear voices erupting, shock, speculation, judgment. She didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, Victor Hartwell had no power over her. She was free. They made it to the wagon before her knees gave out. Caleb caught her, held her up, his arms solid and sure. I've got you, he said. You're all right. You're safe. Lena pressed her face against his chest and let herself shake. Not crying, she was past tears, but shaking with the release of tension that had been coiled inside her for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. Thank you, she whispered, for standing with me, for not making a deal with him. Caleb's arms tightened around her. I told you, you're my wife. That means something to me, even if it doesn't to everyone else. She pulled back enough to look at him. You threatened to kill him. I meant it. I know, that's what scares me. Does it? His eyes searched hers. Scare you? Lena thought about it. Did she fear the violence in Caleb? The hard edge that came from years of war and isolation? Or did she fear the opposite, that she was starting to depend on him, trust him, feel things for him that went beyond their careful arrangement? No, she said finally. It doesn't scare me. You don't scare me. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, letting her go gently. We should get home. People are staring. She glanced around. He was right. Half the town seemed to be watching from doorways and windows. Sarah Coltrane caught her eye and gave a small nod of approval. Others looked less friendly. Let them stare, Lena said, climbing into the wagon. I'm done caring what they think. Caleb smiled. A real smile, not the careful half version he usually wore. Good. They rode out of town in silence, but it was a different silence than before. Warmer, more companionable, like they'd crossed some invisible line together and come out the other side changed. Back at the ranch, Caleb unhitched the horses while Lena went inside. The house felt different now, less like a shelter and more like a home. She moved through it with new eyes, seeing possibilities instead of just function. When Caleb came in, she had coffee brewing. "Lena," he said, and something in his tone made her turn. "What you did today, standing up to him like that? That took courage." "I didn't have a choice." "You did. You could have gone back with him to avoid a scene. Could have let him win to keep the peace. You chose to fight instead." She poured coffee with unsteady hands. "I learned something from you, about standing your ground." "Maybe, but the strength was already there. I'm glad I was there to see it." They stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee, and Lena felt something settling in her chest. Not love. It was too soon for that, and they were both too wary. But maybe the foundation for it. Maybe the beginning of something real. The feeling didn't last. 3 days later, Sarah Coltrane arrived at the ranch in her husband's wagon, her face drawn with worry. "Lena, I had to warn you. There's talk in town. Bad talk." Lena wiped her hands on her apron. "What kind of talk?" "They're saying Victor Hartwell went to the land office before he left. Started asking questions about Caleb's property, his debts, his standing with the bank. And now people are saying—" She stopped, looking miserable. "Sarah, just tell me." "They're saying maybe you and Caleb planned this together. That you lured Victor out here so Caleb could threaten him and get some kind of advantage. That the whole marriage was a scheme." Lena felt cold spread through her chest. "That's insane." "I know, but Martha Holloway's been spreading it around and people are listening. They're saying a woman who'd leave her guardian like that can't be trusted. That Caleb's been played for a fool, or worse, that he's in on it." "But the documents Mercer showed—" "They're saying those could have been fake too. That Mercer's your husband's friend, of course he'd help." Sarah reached out, squeezed Lena's hand. "I don't believe it. Neither does my husband or a few others. But you need to know what's being said." After Sarah left, Lena stood on the porch, watching the empty road. She'd thought facing Victor would end it, but he'd left poison behind, and it was spreading. When Caleb came in from the north pasture that evening, she told him everything. His face darkened as she spoke. "Victor must have planted those questions deliberately," he said, "knowing how this town operates, knowing they'd rather believe the worst." "What do we do?" "We ignore it, keep our heads down, do our work, let it blow over." But Lena wasn't sure it would. She'd seen the way towns worked, the way rumors calcified into accepted truth. They needed to do something, say something, prove that the gossip was lies. She just didn't know what. The answer came a week later, in the worst possible way. Caleb rode out before dawn to check on his cattle in the eastern grazing area. He should have been back by mid-morning. When noon came and went with no sign of him, Lena started to worry. By 2 o'clock, she was saddling a horse. She found him 3 miles out, standing in the middle of what should have been his herd. Instead, there were maybe 20 head of cattle scattered across the range. The rest were gone. "Caleb?" He turned to her, his face carved from granite. "Someone drove off most of the herd last night. At least 80 head, maybe more." Lena dismounted, walked to where he stood. The ground was churned up with hoof prints, too many to count. "Rustlers? Has to be. But the timing—" He shook his head. "This is deliberate. Someone waited until after the hearing, after Victor left, then hit me when I'd be most vulnerable." "You think Victor arranged it?" "Maybe. Or maybe someone in town decided I deserved it for defending you." His voice was bitter. "Either way, this is bad. Those cattle were most of my capital. Without them, I can't make my loan payment, can't buy feed for winter, can't—" He didn't finish, but Lena understood. Without those cattle, they could lose everything. "We'll figure it out," she said. "We'll report it to the sheriff, organize a search. The sheriff's in the next county, and by the time he gets here, the trail will be cold. Whoever did this, they knew exactly what they were doing." Lena looked at the scattered remnants of the herd, then at Caleb's face. He looked like a man watching his future collapse. "We don't give up," she said firmly. "That's what they want, for us to fold, to prove we're what they say we are. We fight back." "How? The cattle are gone, Lena. Even if we find them, Then we find them, or we find another way. But we don't surrender. She grabbed his arm, made him look at her. You stood with me when I had nothing. Let me stand with you now. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then something in his face softened. You're something else, he said quietly. You know that? So I've been told, usually not as a compliment. That pulled a rough laugh from him. Come on, let's see if we can track which way they went. They spent the afternoon following the trail, but whoever had taken the cattle knew the land. The tracks led to rocky ground where they scattered and disappeared. By the time they rode back to the ranch, the sun was setting and they had nothing to show for their efforts. That night, Lena lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Someone had orchestrated this, either Victor or someone in town. Someone who wanted to destroy Caleb's livelihood and reputation in one move. The question was, how did they prove it? The next morning, she rode into town alone. Caleb had protested, but she'd been firm. If they were going to survive this, they needed allies. And allies required a personal touch. Her first stop was the bank. Owen McCarthy looked uncomfortable when she walked in. Mrs. Vance, I heard about Caleb's cattle. Terrible business. Yes, it is. I'm here to discuss his loan. Owen shifted in his seat. I can't give him an extension, if that's what you're asking. The board has policies. I'm not asking for an extension. I'm asking for time to find out who's behind this. Lena leaned forward. Mr. McCarthy, you stood up for us at the council meeting. You said Caleb's word was good enough for you. Was that true or just politics? It was true. Caleb's an honest man. Then help him now. Give us 2 weeks to track down the cattle or find evidence of who took them. If we can't, we'll figure out the payment some other way. Mrs. Vance, 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. Owen studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. 2 weeks. But that's all I can do. After that, the board will want their money, and I won't be able to stop them. Thank you. Her next stop was Thomas Mercer's office. He listened to her plan with growing alarm. Lena, what you're suggesting is dangerous. If someone in town is behind this, then we need to know who. Can you help me or not? Mercer pushed his glasses up his nose. What exactly are you proposing? I want you to quietly ask around. Find out who's been spending money they shouldn't have. Who's been meeting with strangers? Who stands to gain if Caleb loses his ranch? That could be a lot of people. Caleb's land is valuable. Then we narrow it down. Start with the people who've been most vocal about disapproving of our marriage. Mercer looked at her with something like respect. You're not what I expected when you first arrived. Neither is Red Hollow. Lena stood. Will you help? I'll see what I can learn. But Lena, be careful. Whoever did this, they're not playing a polite game. Neither am I. She made 2 more stops to Sarah Coltrane, who promised to listen for gossip among the women, and to the livery, where Sarah's husband agreed to keep an eye on any strangers passing through. By the time she rode back to the ranch, she felt like she'd fought a battle with words instead of weapons. But at least she'd done something. At least they had a plan. Caleb was waiting on the porch, his expression unreadable. You went to town. I did. I told you to wait. And I told you I wasn't helpless. Lena dismounted, tied up the horse. I got us 2 weeks from the bank. I got Mercer and the Coltranes helping to investigate. And I made it clear to everyone I spoke to that we're not folding. Caleb stared at her. Then, to her surprise, he smiled. You really are something else. You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. He came down the steps, stopped in front of her. I'm not used to having someone fight alongside me. I've been on my own so long, I forgot what it's like to have a partner. Well, you have one now, whether you like it or not. I like it. His voice was quiet, intense. I like it more than I should, probably. Lena's breath caught. They stood there in the fading light, close enough to touch, but not touching, something electric building in the air between them. Then a horse's whinny broke the moment. They both turned to see a rider approaching, one of the ranch hands from the neighboring property. Mr. Vance, he called. Found something you need to see, out by Eagle Canyon. Caleb's hand found Lena's without him seeming to think about it. What is it? Tracks, fresh ones, and something else. You're going to want to see this yourself. They rode out together, following the ranch hand across the darkening landscape. Eagle Canyon was a deep cut in the earth, hidden by scrub brush and accessible only through a narrow passage. At the entrance, the ranch hand pointed to the ground. There, see? In the dirt, clear as day, were the tracks of dozens of cattle, leading into the canyon. Caleb dismounted, studying the marks. These are fresh, maybe a day old. That's what I thought. So I went in a little ways, and the ranch hand gestured toward the canyon. Better if you see for yourself. They followed him in, moving carefully through the narrow passage. The canyon opened into a natural basin, hidden from view unless you knew exactly where to look. And there, milling around a small watering hole, were Caleb's cattle. All of them. Lena felt her heart leap. They're here. They're actually here. Yeah. But Caleb didn't sound relieved. He sounded angry. They're here, hidden in a spot that just happens to be on the edge of my property, and Samuel Garrett's. Garrett? Lena tried to place the name. Owns the ranch to the south. We've had disputes about grazing rights before, nothing major, but Caleb walked among the cattle, checking brands. This is a setup. Someone drove my cattle here, knowing they'd be found eventually, knowing it would look like I'd moved them myself or like Garrett had taken them. Why would you move your own cattle? To claim they were stolen? To get sympathy, maybe? Or to create an excuse for not paying my debts? Or to cause trouble with Garrett, get him accused of rustling? Caleb's jaw was tight. Someone's trying to start a range war or destroy my reputation, or both. The ranch hand looked uncomfortable. What do you want me to do? Help me move them back to my land, tonight, before anyone else finds them here. Caleb turned to Lena. You should head home. This is going to take hours. I'm staying. Lena, I'm staying. You need all the help you can get, and I can herd cattle as well as anyone. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he handed her a rope. All right, let's get to work. They drove the cattle out of the canyon by moonlight, working in near silence except for the sounds of animals and hooves on stone. It was exhausting, dirty work, but Lena kept at it, refusing to slow down or complain. By the time they got the herd back to Caleb's grazing land, the sky was starting to lighten. Lena was swaying in her saddle, so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. Caleb rode up beside her. You did good. Thanks, I think. No, I mean it. Most women wouldn't. He stopped, shook his head. Most people wouldn't have stuck it out. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. They rode back to the ranch in the growing dawn, and this time when Lena stumbled getting down from her horse, Caleb caught her and didn't let go. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything, for fighting for this, for fighting for us. Lena looked up at him, at his face lined with exhaustion and stress and something that might have been hope. You'd do the same for me. Yeah, I would. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or romantic. It was rough and honest and desperate, a man reaching for something real in the middle of a storm. Lena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for a moment nothing else mattered except this. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. That probably wasn't appropriate, he said. Probably not. Should I apologize? Don't you dare! He laughed, the sound breathless and surprised. Come on, let's get some sleep. We've got work to do tomorrow. But as Lena climbed the stairs to her room, she knew she wouldn't sleep much. Everything had changed again. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, burned away by crisis and proximity, and the simple fact that they'd chosen each other over and over when it would have been easier not to. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time since arriving in Red Hollow, she was starting to hope it might be something good. They didn't speak about the kiss. For 2 days, they moved around each other with careful politeness, like dancers who'd forgotten their steps. Caleb worked from dawn until dark, checking fences and counting cattle obsessively, as if the herd might vanish again if he looked away. Lena threw herself into the house and the land office documents Mercer had dropped off, searching for any clue about who owned the canyon property or who might benefit from their troubles. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it hummed with things unsaid. Every time their hands brushed passing dishes at dinner, every accidental meeting of eyes across the room, the air seemed to thicken. On the third morning, Thomas Mercer arrived with news. I found something, he said, spreading papers across the kitchen table. Or rather, I found someone who found something. Jacob Reese works at the land office. He remembered a man coming through about 3 weeks ago, before Lena even arrived, asking questions about Caleb's property, about debts and boundaries. Caleb leaned over the table. What did this man look like? Tall, well-dressed, dark hair going silver? Mercer glanced at Lena. Sound familiar? Her stomach dropped. Victor, that's what I thought. He was planning this before you even got here. The guardianship claim was never the real play. He wanted to ruin Caleb, probably hoping you'd have nowhere to go but back to him. Caleb's hands clenched on the edge of the table. Did Reese say who Victor talked to? Anyone in town who might have helped him? That's where it gets interesting. Victor met with Samuel Garrett twice, once at the land office, once at the saloon. Mercer's expression was grim. Garrett's been struggling financially. His ranch isn't profitable, and word is the bank's about to call his notes. If he could get hold of your land, Caleb, he'd have access to the water rights and grazing that would save him. So Victor offered him a deal, Lena said slowly. Help destroy Caleb's reputation, maybe get the ranch cheap when the bank forecloses. That's my guess, though proving it is another matter entirely. Caleb straightened, his jaw set. Then we go talk to Garrett, directly. That's a bad idea, Mercer said quickly. If he's behind the cattle theft, then I want to hear him say it to my face. Caleb was already reaching for his hat. You coming, Lena? She didn't hesitate. Yes. The Garrett Ranch sat in a valley south of Caleb's property, a sprawling operation that had clearly seen better days. The main house needed paint, the barn roof sagged in places, and the corrals held fewer animals than they should. Signs of a man losing his grip on things. Samuel Garrett himself came out when they rode up, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a face weathered by sun and disappointment. His hand stayed near the rifle propped against the porch rail. Vance. Wasn't expecting company. Caleb dismounted, helped Lena down. We need to talk, Samuel, about my cattle and about a man from Baltimore. Something flickered in Garrett's eyes. Don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Man named Victor Hartwell came through here a few weeks back. Met with you at least twice. Odd timing, don't you think? Right before my herd disappears and turns up hidden in Eagle Canyon, right on the boundary between our properties. Garrett's face reddened. You accusing me of something? I'm asking for the truth. Did Hartwell approach you? Did he offer you a deal? For a long moment, Garrett said nothing. Then his shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked older, tired. Yeah, he approached me. Said he had business with you, that you'd wronged him somehow. Said if I helped him cause you some trouble, he'd make it worth my while financially. And you agreed? Lena couldn't keep the anger from her voice. I listened, didn't say yes or no. Garrett met Caleb's eyes. Look, I won't lie. I need money. The bank's breathing down my neck, and I got 3 hands I can barely pay. When Hartwell said he'd give me cash just to have a conversation or two, ask some questions around town, I considered it. But I didn't take his cattle. I swear on my wife's grave, Caleb, I didn't touch your herd. Then who did? Caleb's voice was hard. Because someone drove them into that canyon, and it wasn't an accident. I don't know. Hartwell mentioned he had other people helping him, but he never said who. Just that he had things well in hand. Garrett rubbed his face. I should have told you when he first showed up. Should have warned you. But I was desperate, and desperate men make stupid choices. Lena studied him, trying to read whether he was telling the truth. He looked genuinely miserable, but that didn't mean he was innocent. If you think of anything else, Caleb said finally, anything Hartwell said about who else he was working with, you tell me, immediately. I will. And Caleb, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. They rode away in tense silence. When they were out of sight of the Garrett ranch, Caleb finally spoke. You believe him? I think he's telling the truth about not taking the cattle himself, Lena said carefully. Whether he knows more than he's saying is another question. Victor's still pulling strings even though he's gone. That's what galls me. He's not even here and he's still causing damage. Then we cut the strings. Find whoever he's working with in town and expose them. Caleb glanced at her. You're not afraid? Of making more enemies? I'm terrified. But I'm more afraid of doing nothing and losing everything we're building here. She met his eyes. Aren't you? Yeah, he admitted. I am. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Victor's words in the courtroom, the cold fury in his eyes. He'd meant it when he said this wasn't over. He'd planted seeds of destruction before he left, and now they were watching them grow. She got up, pulled on her robe, and went downstairs. To her surprise, lamplight showed under the door to Caleb's study. She knocked softly. "Come in." He was at his desk, surrounded by papers and ledgers, still fully dressed despite the late hour. He looked exhausted. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." He gestured to a chair. "You want coffee? I just made some." "At midnight?" "Sleep's overrated anyway." She poured herself a cup and sat down. For a while they just existed in comfortable silence, the kind that had become easier between them since the kiss they weren't discussing. Finally, Caleb spoke. "I've been going through the books, trying to figure out how we survive if the bank won't extend the loan. Even with the cattle back, I'm behind on payments. If we have a hard winter or lose even a few more head, we'll figure it out. You keep saying that, like you actually believe it." "I do believe it." Lena leaned forward. "Caleb, I've survived things I didn't think I could survive, so have you. This is just another thing. This is our home, our future. If we lose the ranch, we won't. Because we're going to find out who's behind this, and we're going to stop them." She reached across the desk, covered his hand with hers. "Together. That's what we do, remember? Stand together." He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. "When did you get so fierce?" "I've always been fierce. I just had to remember how." He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes. "About what happened the other morning. We don't have to talk about it." "I think we do. Because I'm going to want to kiss you again, Lena. Probably soon. And I need to know if that's something you want or if I crossed a line I shouldn't have." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "You didn't cross a line." "No? No. I kissed you back, if you remember." "I remember." His voice had gone low, rough. "I remember everything about it." They stared at each other across the desk, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Caleb stood, came around to her side, pulled her to her feet. "We should probably talk about what this means," he said. "About what we are to each other now. Probably. But right now, I just want to kiss my wife. If that's all right with her." "It's all right with her," Lena whispered. This kiss was different from the first. Slower, more deliberate, like they were learning each other instead of just seeking comfort. When they finally pulled apart, Lena's head was spinning. "We should still talk," Caleb said, his forehead resting against hers. "About what we want. About what this arrangement has become." "Tomorrow," Lena agreed. "Right now I just want to stand here." So they did, wrapped in each other in the lamplight. While outside the wind picked up and the first hints of autumn crept across the land. The next day brought a visitor neither of them expected. Judge Holloway arrived mid-morning, driving his own buggy, without his wife. That alone was unusual enough to put Caleb on edge. "Judge," he said, stepping out onto the porch. "Wasn't expecting you." "I'm here unofficially." Holloway climbed down stiffly. He was a heavy man, and the ride had clearly taxed him. "May I come in?" Lena appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Of course. I'll make coffee." Once they were settled in the front room, Holloway cleared his throat. "I'll be direct. I've been hearing things around town, concerning things. About the timing of your cattle disappearing and reappearing." "We found them in Eagle Canyon," Caleb said flatly. "Someone hid them there." "Yes, I heard that too. And I also heard that some people are suggesting you hid them yourself, to create a crisis, perhaps to get out of your loan obligations, or to make Mrs. Vance appear sympathetic." Lena felt anger flash through her. "That's absurd." "I agree. Which is why I'm here." Holloway accepted the coffee cup she handed him. "Mrs. Vance, when you made your accusations against Mr. Hartwell in my courtroom, I'll admit I was skeptical. Men of his standing don't typically, well, but after he left town, I made some inquiries of my own, and I discovered that everything you said appears to be true. The man's reputation in Baltimore is considerably darker than his presentation suggested." "Why are you telling us this?" Caleb asked. "Because I was wrong about you, both of you, and because I believe someone in this town helped Hartwell cause you grief. I want to help you find out who." Lena and Caleb exchanged glances. The judge's support would be invaluable, but it seemed too convenient. "What changed your mind?" Lena asked carefully. Holloway's face reddened slightly. "My wife." Martha, she's been persistent in her campaign against you, Mrs. Vance. And the things she's been saying, the rumors she's been spreading, they reminded me of what she did to another woman years ago. A woman who'd left an unhappy situation and came here seeking a fresh start. Martha ran her out of town with gossip and innuendo. He looked ashamed. I did nothing to stop it then. I won't make that mistake again. What do you need from us? Caleb asked. Tell me everything you know, every conversation, every suspicion. If there's a conspiracy here, I want to root it out. So they told him about Victor's visits to the land office, his meetings with Garrett, the convenient timing of everything. Holloway listened, taking notes, his expression growing darker. Samuel Garrett's desperate enough to make poor choices, he said when they finished, but he's not clever enough to orchestrate this alone. And from what you're describing, Hartwell needed someone local, someone with knowledge of the land, the people, the town's dynamics. Someone respected, Lena added. Someone people would listen to and believe. The three of them sat in silence, the implication hanging in the air. Who in Red Hollow had the standing, the knowledge, and the motivation to help Victor destroy them? Holloway stood. I'll make inquiries, quietly. In the meantime, watch yourselves. If someone's willing to steal cattle and plant false evidence, they might be willing to do worse. After he left, Caleb turned to Lena. I don't know whether to trust him or not. Neither do I. But we don't have a lot of allies right now. We might have to take the help we can get. Even if it's from someone whose wife has been trying to destroy us? Especially then, it means he's going against his own household to do the right thing. That counts for something. 2 days later, Sarah Coltrane came running to the ranch just after dawn, her face pale with fear. There's been a fire, she gasped out. At the Garrett place. The barn's gone, and Samuel's been hurt. Caleb was saddling horses before she finished speaking. How bad? Bad enough. They took him to Doc Morrison's. But Caleb, that's not all. They're saying you did it, that you went there to confront him and it got out of hand. That's insane. We haven't been near his property since we talked to him. I know. But someone's been spreading the story all morning. By the time I heard and came to warn you, half the town already believed it. Lena felt cold spread through her chest. This was it. The escalation they'd been waiting for. Whoever was behind everything had just made their biggest move yet. We need to go into town, she said. Face this directly. They'll arrest me, Caleb said, on no evidence except gossip, but they'll do it anyway. Then we get ahead of it. We go to Judge Holloway first, tell him where we were last night, get him on our side before the mob makes up its mind. Caleb looked at her and she saw the war in his eyes, the instinct to run versus the need to stand firm. Finally, he nodded. All right, but you stay behind me, and if things get ugly, you leave. Promise me. I'm not leaving you. Lena? No. We do this together or not at all. Sarah looked between them. I'll come too. My husband and I will vouch for you. For what it's worth. It's worth everything, Lena said quietly. Red Hollow's main street was packed when they arrived. Word of the fire had brought out everyone, and the mood was ugly. Lena could feel it in the air, the hunger for someone to blame, for justice or just spectacle. They made their way to the courthouse, where Judge Holloway was already holding an impromptu meeting. When Caleb walked in, the room went silent. There he is, someone shouted, the man who burned Garrett out. I didn't touch Garrett's property, Caleb said loudly. I was home all night with my wife. She'll testify to that. Of course she will, Martha Holloway called from the crowd. She's your wife. She'd say anything. Mrs. Holloway, that's enough. The judge's voice cracked like a whip. We will conduct this properly, with evidence and testimony, not mob accusations. What evidence do you need? Another voice demanded. Everyone knows there's bad blood between Vance and Garrett. Everyone heard about their confrontation a few days ago. A conversation, Lena said, stepping forward. We went to ask him questions, and he answered them. There was no confrontation, no threats. So you say. But Garrett's lying in the doctor's office with burns on his hands and smoke in his lungs, and his barn's nothing but ash. Someone did that to him. Judge Holloway held up his hand. I've already sent for the sheriff from Silver Ridge. He'll investigate properly. Until then, no one is accusing anyone of anything. Mr. Vance, I'll need you to stay in town until the sheriff arrives. You can wait at the hotel. You're detaining him? Lena's voice shook with fury. On what grounds? On the grounds of keeping the peace. This crowd is ready to form a lynch mob, Mrs. Vance. I'd rather have your husband under my protection than running from vigilantes. Caleb touched her arm. He's right. I'll stay. You go home. Keep the ranch running. I'm not leaving you here alone. You have to. Someone needs to watch the property. Make sure nothing else happens while I'm gone. He lowered his voice. Please, Lena. For me. She wanted to argue, to fight, to refuse, but she could see the logic in it. And more than that, she could see the plea in his eyes. He needed to know she was safe. All right, she said finally, but if anything happens to you, it won't. Judge Holloway will see to that. Won't you, Judge? You have my word, Holloway said. No one touches him while he's in my custody. Lena left the courthouse with Sarah at her side, her heart in her throat. As they walked to the wagon, she caught sight of Martha Holloway watching from across the street, a small smile on her face. And in that moment, Lena knew. Not suspected. Knew. Martha Holloway wasn't just spreading gossip. She was orchestrating it. She was the one Victor had found, the one who'd helped him plan everything. A woman with social power, with connections, with intimate knowledge of who owed what to whom and who could be pressured or bribed. A woman who'd driven off at least one other woman before and who'd been working to drive Lena away from the start. Lena climbed into the wagon, her mind racing. She had no proof. Nothing that would convince Judge Holloway or anyone else. Just the certainty that came from watching Martha's expression, from seeing the satisfaction in her eyes. You all right? Sarah asked quietly. No, but I will be. Lena picked up the reins. I need you to do something for me. It might be dangerous. Sarah's jaw set. Tell me what you need. That evening, while Caleb sat in a hotel room under guard and the town buzzed with speculation, Lena put her plan into motion. She couldn't prove what Martha had done, but she could maybe force her to reveal herself. She started by paying a visit to Thomas Mercer. I need you to let it slip that Judge Holloway's having second thoughts, she told him, that he's starting to believe Caleb's innocent and he's looking into other suspects. Mercer raised his eyebrows. Is he? Not yet. But Martha Holloway doesn't know that. If she thinks the judge is getting close to the truth, she might panic. Make a mistake. This is dangerous, Lena. If Martha really is involved, then we need to expose her before she destroys us completely. Will you help me or not? He studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll spread the word. But be careful. Cornered animals bite. Her next stop was Samuel Garrett. Doc Morrison tried to turn her away at first, but Lena pushed past him. I need 5 minutes, that's all. Garrett was propped up in bed, his hands wrapped in bandages, his face haggard. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Mrs. Vance, didn't expect to see you. How did the fire start, Samuel? Don't know. Woke up to smoke, tried to save the horses. Barely made it out myself. Did you see anyone? Hear anything unusual? He hesitated. There was a rider. Just before the fire started. I saw someone near the property line, but I couldn't make out who. Thought it was just a drifter passing through. Man or woman? Couldn't tell in the dark. Why? Because I don't think this was an accident, and I don't think Caleb had anything to do with it. Garrett's eyes sharpened. You think someone's trying to frame him? I know they are. The question is whether you're going to help me prove it. What do you need? Tell the sheriff what you just told me, about the rider, and about Victor Hartwell approaching you, all of it. That'll make me look guilty of conspiracy. Maybe. But it's the truth. And right now, the truth is the only weapon we have. She leaned closer. You said you made a mistake not warning Caleb about Victor. This is your chance to make it right. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, I'll talk to the sheriff when he gets here. Tell him everything. Lena left the doctor's office feeling like she'd just moved a crucial piece on a chessboard. Now she just had to wait and see if Martha would make the move she was expecting. She didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Martha Holloway showed up at the ranch. Lena saw her coming from the kitchen window, a hired buggy, no driver, just Martha alone. Which was unusual. Martha never went anywhere without company or an audience. Lena met her on the porch, her hand resting on the rifle Caleb had insisted she keep close. Mrs. Holloway, this is a surprise. May I come in? I'd like to speak with you privately. Every instinct screamed danger, but Lena needed to hear what Martha would say. Of course. Inside, Martha settled into a chair like she owned the place, arranging her skirts with precise movements. Lena remained standing. "I'll be direct, Mrs. Vance. I came to offer you a way out of this unfortunate situation." "Did you?" "Your husband is going to be arrested for arson and possibly attempted murder when the sheriff arrives. The evidence against him is quite damning, but you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. It would be a shame to see it ruined by loyalty to a man you barely know." Lena's grip tightened on the rifle. "What are you proposing?" "Leave him. Annul the marriage. Return east. I have connections in Philadelphia, respectable families who need governesses or companions. I could arrange a position for you, help you start fresh somewhere your past wouldn't follow." "In exchange for what?" "Your testimony. That Caleb was violent, unstable, that you feared for your safety, that you witnessed him make threats against Samuel Garrett." There it was. The confirmation Lena had been waiting for. "You want me to lie. I want you to save yourself. Caleb Vance is a difficult, isolated man who's made enemies. He won't survive this. But you can." "Why?" Lena asked quietly. "Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you?" Martha's mask slipped just for a second, and Lena saw pure venom underneath. "You came here and disrupted the natural order. You're not one of us, you never will be, and yet you act like you belong, like you have the right to judge us, to stand up to me in my own town. So this is about pride, about me not knowing my place. This is about maintaining standards. When Mr. Hartwell approached me, when he explained what kind of woman you really were, I knew it was my duty to help him restore order. By destroying an innocent man's life? Caleb Vance is hardly innocent. He's been a thorn in this community's side for years. Standoffish, superior, refusing to participate in town affairs. He deserved to be brought down a peg. Lena felt something cold and clear settle over her. "You're confessing. You just confessed to conspiracy." Martha's eyes narrowed. "Am I? I don't see anyone here but us. And who would believe a woman like you over me? The judge's wife? A pillar of this community?" "The judge might, especially if you keep talking." Martha laughed. "My husband does what I tell him. He always has. Even if you convince him to listen, it won't matter. The town is behind me. They always are." "Not always," said a voice from the doorway. Both women spun. Judge Holloway stood there, his face pale, his expression devastated. "Martha, what have you done?" "Daniel?" She stood quickly, composure reassembling. "I was just trying to help. I heard everything. From outside. Mrs. Vance's window was open." He looked at his wife like he didn't recognize her. "How could you? How could you conspire with that man, help him torment this woman and her husband? Because they needed to be taught a lesson, because this town has standards, and people like them are innocent, and you've destroyed them for nothing but spite and pride." He turned to Lena. "I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. I knew Martha could be harsh, but I never imagined—" "You need to tell the sheriff," Lena said. "Everything you heard. I will. And I'll see that she faces consequences, even if it costs me everything." He looked at Martha with something like grief. "Did you set the fire? At Garrett's place?" "Of course not. I hired someone, a drifter passing through. Paid him to make it look like Vance's work." "Where's this person now?" "Gone. Long gone. I made sure of it." Holloway closed his eyes. "Come with me. We're going to the courthouse. Now." "I won't. You can't make me confess to You already did. I witnessed it. So did Mrs. Vance. You're going to tell the sheriff exactly what you told us, or I'll testify against you myself." For the first time, fear crept into Martha's expression. She looked at her husband, then at Lena, and seemed to realize her mistake. "They won't believe you," she said, but her voice shook. "I'm Martha Holloway. I've lived here for 30 years. And I'm the judge. My word carries weight, even against yours." He held out his hand. "Come on, Martha. Let's go." They left together, Martha's protests fading as the buggy pulled away. Lena stood on the porch, shaking, unable to quite believe what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd trapped Martha into confessing, and the judge had heard everything. But the victory felt hollow. Caleb was still in custody, the town still believed him guilty, and there was so much left to fix. She saddled a horse and rode into town, needing to see Caleb. needing to tell him what had happened. The streets were busy with afternoon traffic, but she barely noticed. Her whole focus was on getting to the hotel, on seeing him, on... A hand grabbed her horse's bridle. "Mrs. Vance, you need to come with me." She looked down. Owen McCarthy stood there, his face grim. "What's wrong?" "Your husband. He's gone." Lena's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, gone?" "Someone helped him escape from the hotel an hour ago. The guard was knocked unconscious, and when he woke up, Caleb was gone. The sheriff just arrived, and he's forming a posse. They're saying Caleb ran because he's guilty." "He didn't run. Someone took him." Lena's mind raced. Martha said she hired someone to set the fire. What if that same person took Caleb? What if this whole thing was leading to... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. If someone wanted Caleb framed and destroyed, the perfect ending would be finding him dead in the wilderness, having resisted arrest. Or maybe just finding him dead. "Where would they take him?" Owen asked urgently. "If you were going to make someone disappear around here, where would you go?" Lena thought fast. Somewhere isolated. Somewhere no one would stumble across them. Somewhere... "Eagle Canyon," she said. "That's where they hid the cattle. It's hidden, hard to find unless you know the land." "Then that's where we start." Owen swung up onto his own horse. "Come on, and let's hope we're not too late." They rode hard, Lena pushing her horse faster than was wise, her heart hammering with fear. If she lost Caleb now, after everything they'd been through, after finally starting to build something real, she couldn't think about it, couldn't let herself imagine finding him too late. The entrance to Eagle Canyon appeared like a wound in the earth, narrow and dark. Lena dismounted, moved forward on foot, Owen behind her. Voices echoed from inside. Male voices, one of them Caleb's. Relief flooded through her so strongly she almost stumbled. He was alive. He was... "You're making this harder than it needs to be," an unfamiliar voice said. "Just sign the confession. Say you set the fire, and I'll make it quick. Otherwise..." "Go to hell," Caleb said, and Lena heard pain in his voice. They'd hurt him. Rage, white-hot and clarifying, burned through her fear. She looked at Owen, at the rifle in his hands. Then she stepped into the canyon, her own rifle raised. Let him go. Two men spun to face her. One was young, rough-looking, probably the drifter Martha had hired. The other was older, harder, with the look of someone who'd done this kind of work before. Caleb was on the ground between them, his face bloody, his hands tied. The younger man reached for his gun, but Lena fired first. The shot went wide intentionally, ricocheting off the canyon wall with a crack like thunder. "Next one doesn't miss," she said coldly. "Drop your weapons. Now." "Lady, you don't know what you're getting into." Owen stepped up beside her, his rifle trained on the older man. "She knows exactly what she's getting into, and so do we. Drop them." For a tense moment, nobody moved. Then the older man carefully lowered his gun to the ground. The younger one followed suit. "Caleb, can you stand?" Lena didn't take her eyes off the two men. "Yeah." He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. "Nice timing. We need to talk about you getting kidnapped less often." "Add it to the list." Owen collected the guns while Lena kept her rifle trained on their owners. Then they all made their way out of the canyon, Caleb leaning on Lena more than he probably wanted to admit. The sheriff was waiting at the canyon entrance, along with what looked like half the town. Judge Holloway stood at the front, his face set and serious. "Sheriff Barnes," he said formally, "these two men confessed to assaulting and kidnapping Caleb Vance, acting on orders from my wife, Martha Holloway. Mrs. Vance and Mr. McCarthy witnessed the assault and prevented what would likely have been Mr. Vance's murder." The sheriff looked from the judge to the prisoners to Caleb's bloody face. "That true?" "Every word," Lena said. It took another hour to sort everything out. Statements taken, prisoners secured, Doc Morrison called to treat Caleb's injuries. Through it all, Lena stayed at Caleb's side, her hand in his, refusing to let go. Finally, as the sun started to set, the sheriff declared them free to go home. They rode back to the ranch in silence, both too exhausted for words. But when they reached the house, when Caleb helped her down from her horse, he pulled her close and just held her. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You saved mine first. I was just returning the favor." He laughed, the sound raw but genuine. "We're a pair, aren't we?" Yeah, we are. Inside, Lena cleaned his cuts while he told her what had happened, how someone had come to his hotel room claiming to have news from the ranch, how he'd been hit from behind before he could react, how he'd woken up in the canyon with two men discussing the best way to kill him and make it look like an accident. I thought I was done, he admitted, and all I could think about was you. About not getting to see you again, not getting to tell you, tell me what? He cupped her face in his hands, careful of his split knuckles. That I love you. That somewhere between your arrival and now, this stopped being an arrangement and became real. That I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to build a life with you. A real one. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. You stubborn, difficult, wonderful man. I love you too. I think I have for a while now. Even though I come with cattle rustlers and murder attempts, especially because of that, shows you're popular. He laughed and kissed her, and for a while nothing else mattered except this. The two of them, alive, together, having fought their way through everything the world threw at them. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. We still have the wedding to get through, he said. The real one, not the 10-minute courthouse version. Do we have to? Everyone hates us. Not everyone. Judge Holloway's offering to officiate after what his wife did. Says it's the least he can do. Sarah and her husband want to stand up for us. Even Owen McCarthy's offered to host a small reception. That's more than I expected. People talk, but some of them also think. And what happened today, you facing down those men to save me, that made an impression. You're not the outsider anymore, Lena. You're the woman who stood her ground. She thought about that, about how far she'd come from the frightened girl who'd stepped off the stagecoach, about who she'd become in this hard land, with this hard man who'd turned out to have a heart bigger than he wanted anyone to know. All right, she said, let's have a wedding, a real one. Let's show Red Hollow that we're here to stay. Caleb smiled, and it transformed his whole face. I like the sound of that. Outside, the stars were starting to appear, bright and cold and infinite. Tomorrow they'd face whatever came next, the rebuilding, the explanations, the slow work of earning trust and building a future. But tonight, they had this, each other. And for now, that was enough. The morning after felt strange in its ordinariness. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment she lay still, cataloging the sounds of the house. Caleb's footsteps downstairs, the clatter of the stove, the low murmur of his voice as he talked to himself while he worked. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Her body ached from the previous day's riding and tension, and when she looked in the mirror she saw shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. But she was alive. They both were. And Martha Holloway was in custody, along with the men she'd hired. They'd won. So why did she feel so hollowed out? She dressed and went downstairs to find Caleb at the table, his face still marked with bruises, a cut above his eyebrow, held together with neat stitches, courtesy of Doc Morrison. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. Coffee's fresh, he said. You should still be in bed. So should you, but here we are. She poured herself a cup and sat across from him. For a while they just existed in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the morning light paint the kitchen walls gold. People are going to come, Caleb said finally, to offer congratulations or condolences or just to gawk at us. We should probably prepare for that. I'm not sure I have the energy to be gracious. Then we'll be ungracious together. He reached across the table, took her hand. How are you really? After yesterday? Lena considered the question. I keep seeing those men's faces when I fired the rifle. I keep thinking about what would have happened if Owen and I had been 5 minutes later. But you weren't. But we could have been. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. She met his eyes. I almost lost you. We almost lost everything. And I know we're supposed to feel victorious or relieved, but mostly I just feel tired. Yeah, Caleb said quietly. I know that feeling. How did you do it? After the war, I mean. How did you come back and just keep going? He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. I didn't, at first. For a long time, I just went through the motions. Work, sleep, repeat. It wasn't living, it was just existing. And then you showed up, and suddenly I had a reason to care about tomorrow again. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. I'm not saying you fixed me. I'm saying you reminded me why it was worth trying to fix myself. He squeezed her hand. You're allowed to be tired, Lena. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed. What you're not allowed to do is pretend you're fine when you're not. She felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. When did you get so wise? About 5 minutes ago. Don't get used to it. That startled a laugh out of her, breaking the tension. They finished their coffee in easier silence, and by the time the first visitors arrived mid-morning, Lena felt steadier. Sarah Coltrane came first, bringing fresh bread and the kind of fierce hug that made Lena's ribs protest. You scared 10 years off my life yesterday, Sarah said, riding into that canyon like some kind of avenging angel. I had a rifle and a very bad temper. Not quite angelic. Close enough for me. Sarah set the bread on the counter. The whole town's talking about it, about you facing down those men, about Martha's confession. People are saying you're either the bravest woman in Red Hollow or the craziest. Probably both, Caleb offered from the doorway. Definitely both, Lena agreed. Sarah's expression turned serious. Martha's been formally charged. Conspiracy, attempted murder, half a dozen other things. Judge Holloway's recused himself from the case, obviously. They're bringing in a judge from Silver Ridge to handle the trial. How's he taking it? Lena asked. The judge, I mean. Not well. He's devastated. Keeps saying he should have seen it, should have known what she was doing. Sarah shook her head. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Other visitors followed throughout the day. Thomas Mercer came with legal documents clearing Caleb of all suspicion. Owen McCarthy stopped by to check on them and to awkwardly offer his continued support. Even Samuel Garrett made the trip from town, still bandaged, but insistent on thanking them for exposing the truth. I'm rebuilding, he told Caleb. Gonna take time, but Owen's extended my loan. Says I earned some goodwill by being honest with the sheriff. He paused. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever need help with anything, I owe you. You don't owe me, Caleb said, but I won't say no to neighborly cooperation going forward. They shook hands, and Lena watched something pass between them. Not quite friendship, but the beginning of mutual respect. It was more than she'd expected. By evening, she was exhausted from smiling and accepting concern and reassuring people that yes, they were fine, everything was fine. When the last visitor finally left, she sagged against the closed door. Is it always like this? She asked. After something terrible happens, does everyone suddenly want to be your friend? Usually they just avoid you and hope the awkwardness goes away on its own, Caleb said. This is new for me too. I'm not sure I like it. Give it time. Most of them will go back to ignoring us eventually. The ones who stick around are worth keeping. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept drifting off, only to jerk awake, heart pounding, seeing shadows that looked like men with guns. Finally, around 2 a.m, she gave up and went downstairs. Caleb was already in the kitchen, shirtless and rumpled, staring at nothing. Nightmares? She asked. Something like that. You? Same. They made tea this time instead of coffee and sat together at the table in the lamplight. Outside, an owl called in the darkness, hunting. I keep thinking about what Martha said, Lena said quietly, about maintaining order, about people knowing their place. She really believed she was doing the right thing. People like her always do. They build their whole identity around being better than everyone else, around controlling who belongs and who doesn't. When someone challenges that, they can't handle it. Do you think she'll actually face consequences? Or will her status protect her? I don't know. Probably depends on how much the judge is willing to sacrifice to see justice done. Caleb rubbed his face. Part of me hopes she pays for what she did. Part of me just wants it to be over. We still have the trial to get through. She'll fight the charges, claim she was manipulated or misunderstood. Let her fight. We've got witnesses, including her own husband. And those 2 men she hired, they'll probably testify against her to save their own skins. He looked at Lena. We'll get through this too, same way we got through everything else. Together? Together. She reached across the table and he took her hand, and they sat like that until the tea grew cold and the first hints of dawn started creeping across the sky. The days that followed settled into a strange routine. They worked the ranch, prepared for the upcoming wedding, and tried to pretend life was normal. But underneath everything ran a current of tension, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came a week later in the form of a letter. Lena found it in the afternoon mail. Expensive paper, expensive ink, her name written in handwriting she recognized immediately. Her hand shook as she opened it. Victor had written from Baltimore. The letter was polite, almost cordial, but the threat underneath was unmistakable. He congratulated her on her marriage, expressed disappointment at how things had ended between them, and casually mentioned that he'd been in contact with several business associates in the territory. Men with influence. Men who might find it interesting to know about certain debts, certain vulnerabilities in the Vance family finances. He never said it directly, but the implication was clear. He could still hurt them, even from 1,000 miles away. And he would, if she didn't… What? The letter didn't specify. That was the genius of it. The threat was real, but vague enough to be denied. Lena read it 3 times, feeling cold spread through her chest. She'd thought facing him in court would be the end of it. She'd been wrong. When Caleb came in that evening, he found her sitting at the kitchen table, the letter in front of her. What's that? A reminder that we're not as free as we thought. He read it, his expression darkening with each line. When he finished, he very carefully set it down and looked at her. He's trying to scare you. He's succeeding. Lena, he's got no power here. Whatever business associates he claims to have, they're not going to risk their reputations on his say-so. Not after what came out in court. You don't know that. You don't know what kind of connections he has, what favors he can call in. Her voice was rising despite herself. He destroyed my life once. What's to stop him from doing it again? Me. I'm what's stopping him. Caleb crouched in front of her chair. Listen to me. Victor Hartwell is a coward who hides behind lawyers and hired men. He couldn't control you, so now he's trying to control you through fear. Don't let him. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. Because I'm scared too. Scared of losing the ranch, losing you, losing everything we're building. But I'll be damned if I let some Baltimore snake dictate how we live our lives. Lena looked at him, at the bruises still fading on his face, at the determination in his eyes. What do? We call his bluff. I'll talk to Owen at the bank, make sure our finances are solid. We'll reach out to our own contacts, make sure people know what kind of man Victor is. And if he does try something, we'll deal with it. But we don't change our plans. We don't give him the satisfaction of knowing he rattled us. He did rattle us. Then we don't let him know it. Caleb stood, pulled her to her feet. Come on, we're going into town. Now? It's almost dark. Exactly. We're going to the saloon, we're going to buy drinks for anyone who wants one, and we're going to show Red Hollow that we're not hiding, we're not scared, and we're not going anywhere. It was reckless and probably foolish, but something about the sheer audacity of it made Lena laugh. You want to celebrate being threatened? I want to celebrate still being alive. Everything else is just noise. So they went into town, dressed in their best clothes, and walked into the Red Hollow saloon like they owned the place. The conversation stopped when they entered, dozens of eyes turning to watch. Caleb walked straight to the bar. Whiskey for everyone who wants one. On me. The bartender raised his eyebrows. You celebrating something, Vance, and being married to this bravest woman in the territory. That worth celebrating? A beat of silence. Then someone in the back called out, Damn right it is. The tension broke. Men came forward to accept drinks, to shake Caleb's hand, to offer Lena awkward congratulations. Not everyone participated. There were still those who turned away, who muttered into their beers about outsiders and scandals. But more people joined in than didn't, and by the end of the night, the saloon felt almost friendly. Sarah Coltrane appeared at Lena's elbow. This was smart, showing you're not beaten. This was Caleb being stubborn. Sometimes stubborn is smart. Sarah lowered her voice. Word is Martha's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea, reduce charges in exchange for naming everyone she worked with. Will it work? Judge from Silver Ridge doesn't seem inclined to be lenient, but we'll see. Sarah squeezed her arm. Either way, you won. Don't forget that. They rode home late, both a little drunk and a lot exhausted. When they reached the ranch, Caleb helped Lena down from the wagon and didn't immediately let go. Thank you, he said. For what? For coming with me tonight. For not letting Victor's letter make you small again. For being exactly who you are. Lena leaned into him, felt his arms come around her. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Both too stubborn to know when we're beaten. That's why we're perfect for each other. Inside, they made their way upstairs, but at the landing, Caleb caught her hand. Lena, I know we said we'd take things slow, figure out what this marriage means, but I don't want slow anymore. I don't want separate rooms and careful distance. I want you, all of you. If that's something you want too." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about the girl who'd stepped off the stagecoach, terrified and running. She thought about everything they'd survived together, every time they'd chosen each other when it would have been easier not to. "I want that too," she said quietly. "I want all of it. The real marriage, the real life, with you." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and when he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise. "My room or yours?" "Ours," Lena said. "From now on, it's ours." They didn't make it easy or smooth or particularly graceful. They were too tired, too wound up, too aware of how close they'd come to losing each other. But they made it real and honest, and when they finally fell asleep tangled together in Caleb's bed, Lena felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for as long as she could remember. She'd found home. Not in a place, but in a person. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in October, giving them time to make arrangements and for the gossip to die down. Judge Holloway had quietly offered to officiate, despite the scandals surrounding his wife, and after some discussion, they'd accepted. "He's trying to make amends," Caleb had said. "Let him." Sarah had taken charge of organizing the reception, enlisting help from the other women in town who'd softened toward Lena after the canyon incident. It wouldn't be elaborate, just a simple gathering at the Coltrane's livery barn, with food and music and whatever community goodwill they could muster. Lena found herself surprisingly nervous about it. The courthouse wedding had been easy because it meant nothing, just papers and signatures. This one would be real, public, a declaration that they belonged to each other and to this town, whether everyone liked it or not. 2 days before the wedding, Martha Holloway's trial began. Lena and Caleb attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom, watching as the prosecutor laid out the evidence. The two men Martha had hired both testified against her, describing in detail how she'd recruited them, paid them, and instructed them to make Caleb's death look accidental. Martha sat through it all with her spine rigid, her face a mask of outraged dignity. When it was her turn to testify, she claimed she'd been manipulated by Victor Hartwell, that he'd convinced her Lena was dangerous and needed to be driven away for the good of the community. "I never intended anyone to be hurt," she said, her voice trembling. "I was simply trying to protect our town from undesirable elements." The prosecutor had been ready for that. By hiring men to commit arson? By conspiring to frame an innocent man for murder? I didn't know they would go that far. Mr. Hartwell assured me it would only be a scare, a way to convince them to leave peacefully. And yet you paid these men to kidnap and kill Mr. Vance. I did no such thing. They acted on their own initiative. But the hired men had already testified otherwise, and the jury's expressions suggested they didn't believe her. Judge Holloway sat in the gallery, his face gray, watching his wife perjure herself to save her reputation. The verdict came on the third day, guilty on all counts. Martha's composure finally cracked, her face crumpling as the judge from Silver Ridge pronounced sentence: 10 years in the territorial prison with no possibility of early release. Judge Holloway left the courtroom immediately after, and Lena saw him standing outside, staring at nothing. She went to him. "Judge Holloway." He turned and she was shocked by how much he'd aged in just a few weeks. "Mrs. Vance, I owe you an apology, many apologies." "You've already apologized, and you testified against your own wife. That took courage. It took necessity. I couldn't let her lies stand, even if it destroyed my marriage." He looked at her with hollow eyes. "I loved her once. Maybe I still do. But I can't forgive what she did to you and your husband, what she tried to do. I'm sorry you had to make that choice. I'm sorry I didn't make it sooner. Maybe if I'd been willing to see what she really was years ago, that other woman she drove away would have had a chance too." He straightened his shoulders. "I'm resigning from the bench. I'll finish out the term, but after that, I'm done. I don't have the moral authority anymore." "That's not true. You did the right thing in the end. The right thing would have been stopping her before it got this far." He touched his hat. "I'll see you at the wedding, if you'll still have me." "Of course we will." He walked away, shoulders bent under the weight of his choices, and Lena felt an unexpected surge of pity for him. He'd lost everything: his wife, his reputation, his faith in his own judgment, all because he'd finally chosen to see the truth. That evening, she told Caleb about the conversation. Think he'll actually resign? Caleb asked. I think he means it. I think he doesn't know how to live with himself otherwise. That's hard, being the one left behind to pick up the pieces. Lena looked at him. Is that how you felt? After the war? Yeah, everyone I knew was either dead or changed so much they might as well be. I came home to a place that didn't feel like home anymore, to a family that didn't know what to do with me. He was quiet for a moment. That's why I understand Holloway. Sometimes you survive something, and the survival is harder than the thing itself. But you made it through. Eventually, with a lot of time and distance and a stubborn mail-order bride who refused to let me hide. He pulled her close. You saved me, Lena, in more ways than you know. We saved each other. That's how this works. The day before the wedding, Lena woke to find Caleb already gone and a note on the kitchen table. Gone to check the north pasture, back by noon. Don't work too hard. See. She smiled at the note, tucked it into her pocket, and set about preparing for tomorrow. Sarah was coming later to help with her dress, a simple cream-colored gown they'd found in the general store. Nothing fancy, but prettier than anything Lena had owned in years. She was hanging laundry when she heard a horse approaching. Thinking it was Caleb returning early, she turned with a smile. The smile died on her face. A stranger sat astride a fine bay horse, dressed in traveling clothes that marked him as someone from back east. He was young, maybe 30, with an earnest face and intelligent eyes. Mrs. Vance? Who's asking? He dismounted, keeping his distance respectfully. My name is Robert Ashford. I'm an attorney from Philadelphia. I've been retained to deliver a message to you. Lena's stomach dropped. From Victor Hartwell. No, ma'am. From your late mother's family. The Fairchilds. She blinked, completely thrown. I don't understand. My mother's family disowned her when she married my father. They wanted nothing to do with us. That was your grandfather's doing, and he passed away 6 months ago. Your uncle, James Fairchild, has been searching for you ever since. He only recently discovered you'd moved to Red Hollow. Ashford reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a leather portfolio. May I? Still wary, Lena gestured to the porch. They sat, and Ashford opened the portfolio to reveal documents, letters, and what looked like bank statements. Your mother was the daughter of Charles Fairchild, one of Philadelphia's most prominent merchants. When she eloped with your father against his wishes, he cut her off completely. But before his death, he had a change of heart. He left a trust for you, a substantial one. Your uncle has been trying to locate you to deliver your inheritance. Lena stared at the papers, unable to process what she was hearing. How substantial? $50,000, plus an annual income from various investments. You're a wealthy woman, Mrs. Vance, or you will be once you sign the necessary documents. $50,000. It was more money than Lena had ever imagined having. Enough to save the ranch 10 times over. Enough to live anywhere, do anything. Enough to leave if she wanted to. The thought came unbidden, and she hated herself for it. But it was there. The option she'd never had before. The freedom to choose without desperation driving her. There are conditions, of course, Ashford continued. Your uncle would like you to visit Philadelphia, meet the family. And there's the matter of your marriage. The trust was established for a Fairchild daughter, and some members of the family are concerned about your current situation. Concerned how? Ashford looked uncomfortable. They've heard about the circumstances of your marriage. The advertisement, the hasty wedding. They want to ensure you weren't coerced or taken advantage of. Lena felt anger kindle in her chest. I wasn't. I believe you, but they'll want proof. They'll want to meet Mr. Vance, assess the situation for themselves. If they determine the marriage was entered into under duress or for financial gain, they may require an annulment as a condition of receiving the inheritance. And if I refuse, then the money goes to your cousins instead. Ashford leaned forward. Mrs. Vance, I'm not here to judge your choices. I'm here to inform you of your options. You have family who want to know you and resources that could make your life considerably easier. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. He left the documents, took his leave, and rode away, leaving Lena sitting on the porch with her world tilted sideways. When Caleb came home an hour later, he found her still there, staring at nothing. Lena, what's wrong? She told him everything, about the lawyer, the inheritance, the conditions. When she finished, he sat down beside her, his face carefully neutral. "That's a lot of money," he said finally. "Yes." "Enough to do anything you want, go anywhere." "Yes." "Including leaving here, leaving me." She turned to look at him. "Is that what you think I want?" "I don't know. A few months ago, you came here because you had no other options. Now you do. You have family, money, a way back to the life you were supposed to have before everything went wrong." His voice was even, but she could hear the fear underneath. "I won't blame you if you take it." "Caleb, I'm serious. You've got a chance to be free, really free. Not tied to a struggling ranch and a man with more problems than prospects. You should consider it." Lena stood up, fury flooding through her. "Don't you dare!" He blinked. "What?" "Don't you dare make this decision for me. Don't you dare tell me what I should want or what would be best for me. I've had enough of men doing that to last a lifetime." "I'm not trying to Yes, you are. You're scared I'll leave, so you're trying to push me away first. Make it easier. But I'm not going anywhere, Caleb Vance, so you can stop preparing yourself to lose me. You don't know that. You haven't had time to think about what this means." "I know exactly what it means. It means I have options. It means I can choose to stay here, not because I'm desperate or trapped, but because this is where I want to be. With you. Building the life we started." She grabbed his face, made him look at her. "I love you. Not your ranch, not your money, not what you can give me. You. The stubborn, difficult, wonderful man who stood up for me when no one else would. And no amount of inheritance is going to change that." "Lena, I'm not finished. Tomorrow we're getting married. A real marriage, in front of everyone. And then I'm going to write to this uncle of mine and tell him he can keep his conditions and his concerns. I'll take the money if it doesn't require me to prove anything, but I'm not annulling this marriage. Not for $50,000, not for any amount." Caleb stared at her, something like wonder in his eyes. "You're serious?" "Completely. You'd give up all that money, that security?" "I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing what matters." She softened slightly. "The money would help, yes. We could pay off the ranch, expand the herd, maybe hire some help. But none of that means anything without you. Don't you understand that by now?" He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. She felt him shaking slightly and realized he was crying, silently, the way men did when they'd learned to hide it. "I thought you'd leave," he whispered. "I thought once you had the chance, you'd see you deserved better than this. This is better. This is everything." She held him tight. "You're stuck with me, Caleb, for better or worse, starting tomorrow." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other on the porch while the sun moved across the sky. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb's eyes were red but clear. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Probably not, but you're getting me anyway." She smiled. "Besides, I don't deserve you either, so we're even." That night they talked about the inheritance, about what they'd do with the money if Lena could claim it without conditions. They'd pay off the loans, yes, but also invest in the ranch, maybe help Samuel Garrett get back on his feet, fund a proper school for the town so other women wouldn't be as trapped as Martha had been. "We could do a lot of good with that money," Lena said. "We could, if your family doesn't insist on controlling how we live our lives. Then I'll make it clear that's not negotiable. I'll visit Philadelphia, meet them, show them I'm fine, but I'm not proving anything. I'm not justifying my choices to people who've never cared about me before." Caleb kissed her forehead. "When did you get so fierce?" "You keep asking me that. I keep telling you. I've always been fierce. I just forgot for a while." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the first real bite of autumn in the air. Lena woke early in her own room. They'd decided to spend the last night apart, a nod to tradition, and lay watching the sunrise paint her ceiling pink and gold. Today, she was getting married. Really married, with witnesses and vows and a public declaration that she'd chosen this life, this man, this future. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Sarah arrived at 8 with breakfast and the dress, chattering about final preparations and who was coming and how beautiful everything looked at the barn. Lena let the words wash over her, focusing instead on getting ready, on pinning up her hair and smoothing down the cream-colored dress. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, but because she looked happy. genuinely, radiantly happy in a way she'd never been before. "You ready?" Sarah asked, coming up behind her. "I've been ready since the day I stepped off that stagecoach. I just didn't know it yet." They rode into town together, Lena's stomach fluttering with anticipation. The barn had been transformed, simple decorations, yes, but done with care. Wildflowers in jars, benches arranged in rows, a makeshift altar at the front where Judge Holloway waited in his formal robes. And there, standing at the altar looking uncomfortable in his best suit, was Caleb. When he saw her, his whole face transformed. The nervousness disappeared, replaced by something that looked like awe. She walked down the aisle alone, no one to give her away because she was giving herself. And when she reached him, he took her hands and didn't let go. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. "We're gathered here today to witness the marriage of Caleb Vance and Lena Hartwell. Not their first marriage, but their first real one. The one they're choosing freely, with full hearts and clear minds." It wasn't a traditional opening, but it fit them. Lena felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. The judge continued, speaking about commitment and choice, and the courage it took to build a life with another person. Then it was time for the vows. Caleb went first, his voice rough but steady. "Lena, I promise to stand with you, to choose you every day, even when it's hard, to build a life with you that's honest and real. I promise to never let you feel alone or unsafe again. And I promise to love you for as long as I'm breathing." Lena's turn. "Caleb, I promise to stand my ground, to be your partner, not your burden, to fight alongside you for the life we're building. I promise to be honest, to be brave, and to love you with everything I have, today and always." "Then by the power invested in me," Judge Holloway said, his voice thick with emotion, "I pronounce you husband and wife, again. But this time it counts." Caleb kissed her, and the room erupted in applause. Not everyone was there. Some people still held grudges, still didn't approve, but enough were, enough to matter. The reception lasted into the evening, with food and music and dancing. Lena found herself passed from partner to partner, accepting congratulations and well wishes from people who'd judged her just weeks before. She didn't hold grudges. She was too happy for that. Late in the evening, she and Caleb slipped away from the celebration, walking out into the cool night air. "Happy?" he asked. "Absurdly. You?" "More than I've been in years, maybe ever." He pulled her close. "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing this. For choosing me, when you could have chosen anything else." Lena leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. "There was never really a choice. Not from the moment I read your advertisement. I knew somehow that you were the answer I'd been looking for. Even though I'm stubborn and difficult, especially because of that. I needed someone who wouldn't break. Someone who'd stand firm when everything else was falling apart." She looked up at him. "I found that in you." They stood together under the stars, and somewhere behind them the party continued, but they didn't care. They had everything they needed right here, each other and the future they'd fought for, and the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Tomorrow they'd write to the Fairchilds. Tomorrow they'd figure out the inheritance and the ranch and all the practical details of their life. But tonight, they just held each other and were grateful for survival, for love, for second chances, for home. The winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with a vengeance that caught even the old-timers by surprise. Lena woke one morning in late November to find the world transformed, everything white and silent, the landscape erased under 2 feet of snow. Caleb was already up, stoking the fire, his breath visible in the cold air of the bedroom. "Storm hit harder than expected," he said when he saw her awake. "I need to check on the cattle, make sure they've got access to the shelter. I'll come with you." "Lena, it's freezing out there, and you'll work twice as fast with help. I'm coming." They bundled up in layers and ventured out into the biting cold. The wind cut through even the thickest coat, and Lena's fingers went numb within minutes despite her gloves. But she kept working alongside Caleb, breaking ice on water troughs, herding cattle toward the sheltered areas, checking for any animals in distress. It was brutal work, and by the time they made it back to the house hours later, Lena's whole body ached with cold. But there was satisfaction in it too, the knowledge that they'd done what needed doing, that the herd would survive the storm because they'd prepared. Inside, she made hot coffee while Caleb rebuilt the fire. They sat close to the flames, thawing slowly, not speaking much. This had become their rhythm over the past months, comfortable silences punctuated by conversation when it mattered, each of them content just to exist in the other's presence. "Letter came yesterday," Caleb said eventually. "From your uncle. I put it on the desk." Lena had been expecting it. She'd written to James Fairchild weeks ago, laying out her terms clearly. She'd accept the inheritance without conditions, or not at all. She wouldn't annul her marriage, wouldn't move back east, wouldn't prove herself to people who'd ignored her existence until it became financially convenient. She opened the letter with hands that had finally stopped shaking from cold. James Fairchild's response was surprisingly gracious. He apologized for the conditions, explained that other family members had insisted on them, but that he'd overruled them. The inheritance was hers, no strings attached. He hoped she'd consider visiting Philadelphia in the spring to meet the family, but he understood if she chose not to. The money would be transferred to her account at the Red Hollow Bank within the month. "Well?" Caleb asked. He agreed, all of it. "The money's ours." She looked at him. "What do we do with $50,000? First, we pay off every debt we have. Then we expand the herd, fix up the house, hire some help so you're not breaking ice in a blizzard." He paused. "And then we help the people who helped us. Samuel Garrett needs a new barn. The Coltrane's mentioned wanting to expand the livery. Judge Holloway could use some financial help now that he's retiring." Lena felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. "You want to give it away?" "Not all of it, but some. Money's just a tool, Lena. What matters is what you build with it." She crossed the room and kissed him, tasting coffee and wood smoke and home. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry. I love you, even when you're being noble and generous and making me look bad by comparison. You could never look bad." He pulled her onto his lap. "You're the one who stood up to Martha Holloway, remember? You've got me beat in the noble department. I was terrified the entire time. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You taught me that." They spent the rest of the day inside watching the snow fall and making plans for the future. It felt surreal, having options instead of just survival. But Lena was learning to accept good things when they came, to not wait for the other shoe to drop. Sometimes things just worked out. Not perfectly, not easily, but well enough. The money arrived in January, and with it came a flurry of activity. Caleb hired 2 ranch hands, young men from Silver Ridge, who were competent and trustworthy. They expanded the herd carefully, buying good breeding stock instead of just numbers. They renovated the house. Nothing fancy, but proper windows that didn't let in drafts, a new stove for the kitchen, a second bedroom for guests, or someday, children. That thought made Lena pause. Children. She and Caleb hadn't discussed it directly, but it hung between them sometimes. The possibility of a family. She wasn't sure how she felt about it yet. Part of her wanted it desperately. Part of her was terrified she'd repeat the pattern she'd grown up with, that she'd fail at motherhood the way her aunt's household had failed at family. She mentioned it to Sarah one afternoon while they were working on a quilt together. "Do you think about having children?" Lena asked. Sarah's hands stilled on the fabric. "Every day. Michael and I have been trying for 3 years now. No luck yet." "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Most people don't. It's not something you announce." Sarah resumed stitching. "Why? Are you thinking about it?" "Maybe. I don't know. I see Caleb with the ranch hands, teaching them things, being patient when they make mistakes, and I think he'd be a good father. But then I remember my own childhood, and I wonder if I'd know how to be a good mother." "Your childhood was complicated. That doesn't mean you're doomed to repeat it." Sarah looked at her directly. "You've already broken every pattern they tried to force you into. You left. You built a new life. You stood up for yourself. That takes strength most people don't have. Or desperation. Same thing sometimes. The point is you did it, and if you decide you want children, you'll figure that out too. You and Caleb both. You're good at figuring things out." Lena thought about that conversation for days afterward. She and Caleb had built something solid, yes, but was it stable enough for children? Could they handle that kind of responsibility while still managing the ranch and navigating the town's complicated social dynamics? She was still mulling it over when Victor's final letter arrived. This one was brief, almost businesslike. He'd heard about her inheritance, about her marriage becoming permanent, about Martha Holloway's conviction. He wanted Lena to know he held no ill will, that he hoped she'd found happiness in her new life. He was moving to San Francisco, starting fresh, putting the past behind him. It sounded almost reasonable, almost sincere. But Lena knew better. The letter was a closing argument, Victor's way of rewriting history. In his version, he was the magnanimous guardian, she was the wayward ward, and everything that had happened was just unfortunate misunderstanding. She burned the letter without showing it to Caleb. Some things didn't deserve space in their home. Spring came late but welcome, melting the snow and revealing a landscape ready to bloom. Lena spent more time outside, helping with the ranch work, learning the rhythms of the land. She was getting good at it, reading weather signs, understanding cattle behavior, knowing when to push and when to wait. One morning in April, she woke feeling strange. Not sick exactly, but off. Her stomach felt unsettled, and certain smells made her nauseated. She ignored it for a week, chalking it up to something she'd eaten or the changing season. Sarah took one look at her and knew. "You're pregnant," she said flatly. Lena stared at her. "I can't be. When was your last monthly?" Lena tried to remember and couldn't. She'd been so busy, so focused on other things that she hadn't paid attention. It's been a while." "Then you're pregnant." Sarah's face was complicated. Happiness for Lena, pain for herself. "Congratulations." We weren't trying. We weren't even thinking about it seriously. Babies don't usually wait for you to be ready. That's kind of their specialty." Lena sat down hard on a bench outside the general store, trying to process the information. A baby. She was going to have a baby. She and Caleb were going to be parents. Terror and joy warred in her chest, neither one winning. That evening, she told Caleb. He was in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal any day, and Lena stood in the doorway, trying to find words. "I need to tell you something." He looked up, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think anything's wrong. Sarah thinks I'm pregnant." Caleb went very still. "Are you?" "I think so. I haven't seen a doctor yet, but all the signs are there." He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. She felt him shaking slightly. "Are you happy?" she asked quietly. "Or are you scared?" "Both. Terrified and thrilled in equal measure." He pulled back to look at her. "How do you feel?" "The same. I keep thinking about all the ways I could fail at this, all the ways it could go wrong. Then we'll fail together. And we'll figure it out together, same way we've figured out everything else." He touched her face gently. "You're going to be an amazing mother, Lena. You're strong and brave, and you don't take nonsense from anyone. That's exactly what a kid needs." "What if I'm not? What if I can't?" "You will. Because you care enough to be scared, and that's half the battle right there." He kissed her forehead. "We've got this. I promise." Doc Morrison confirmed the pregnancy a week later. Lena was about 3 months along, due in late October. He gave her a list of things to watch for, warned her to take it easy during the summer heat, and sent her home with instructions to rest more and worry less. The worrying less part proved impossible. As her belly grew through the summer, Lena's anxiety grew with it. She read every book she could find on childbirth and infant care, interrogated every mother in town about their experiences, prepared obsessively for every possible scenario. Caleb watched with patient amusement, occasionally reminding her that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and most of them managed fine. "Most of them didn't have a choice," Lena pointed out. "Neither do you at this point, so you might as well relax and enjoy it." She tried. She really did. But relaxation had never been her strong suit. In August, they received an unexpected visitor. James Fairchild arrived in Red Hollow with his wife and 2 daughters, eager to meet the niece he'd been searching for. Lena's first instinct was to refuse them, to protect her hard-won peace from people who wanted something from her. But Caleb convinced her to give them a chance. "They came all this way," he said. "Least we can do is hear them out." So she agreed to dinner, tense, and prepared for judgment or manipulation or demands. What she got instead was genuine warmth. James Fairchild was a kind man in his 50s, nothing like her grandfather had apparently been. He asked about her life, listened to her stories about the ranch and the town, admired the home she and Caleb had built. His wife Eleanor was gracious and interested, asking intelligent questions without prying. Their daughters, both younger than Lena, treated her like the older sister they'd always wanted. "We didn't know about you," the younger one, Catherine, said over dinner. "Not until grandfather's will was read. When we found out we had a cousin, we wanted to meet you immediately." "Why?" Lena asked, still wary. "I'm a stranger to you." "Your family," James said simply. "That matters to us. And from what I've learned about you, how you survived difficult circumstances, built a life here, stood up to people who tried to tear you down, I'm proud to call you my niece." Something in Lena's chest cracked open. She'd been braced for rejection or conditional acceptance, not this uncomplicated affection. It was almost harder to handle. They stayed for 3 days, during which time Lena slowly let down her guard. Eleanor was particularly easy to talk to, sharing stories about her own pregnancy experiences and offering advice without being overbearing. By the time they left, promising to visit again after the baby was born, Lena felt like she'd gained something she hadn't known she was missing. A family that actually wanted her. "They're not what I expected," she told Caleb that night. "No, I expected them to look down on us, on this life. But they seemed genuinely impressed by what we've built here." "That's because what we've built is impressive. You just can't see it because you're in the middle of it." He put his hand on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick. "We've got land, livestock, a home, community respect. That's more than most people manage in a lifetime. We also almost got killed multiple times. That just makes it more interesting." He grinned at her expression. "I'm kidding, mostly. The point is, we made it. We're here. We're happy. That's worth being proud of." Lena was learning to accept that, learning to look at what they had instead of focusing on what had gone wrong along the way. It wasn't easy. Her mind still went to worst-case scenarios automatically, but she was getting better at pulling it back. October arrived with crisp air and turning leaves. Lena was huge and uncomfortable, counting down the days until her due date. Caleb had become overprotective to the point of absurdity, refusing to let her do anything more strenuous than sit on the porch. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she told him for the 100th time. "I know. But if anything happened to you or the baby because I let you work too hard, I'd never forgive myself. Nothing's going to happen. Women do this every day. You're not every woman. You're mine, and I'm allowed to worry." She couldn't really argue with that, so she settled for rolling her eyes and letting him fuss. The baby came 2 weeks late, on a cold November morning that reminded Lena of the day she'd first arrived in Red Hollow. The labor was long and hard, 18 hours of pain that made her curse Caleb, curse herself, curse the entire concept of childbirth. But when it was finally over, when Doc Morrison placed the squirming, screaming infant in her arms, everything else fell away. A daughter. They had a daughter. She was tiny and red and furious at being born, and Lena loved her with an intensity that was almost frightening. Caleb sat beside the bed, staring at the baby with an expression of absolute wonder. "She's perfect. She's a mess. Look at all that hair." "Perfect," he repeated firmly. He touched the baby's tiny hand, and she immediately gripped his finger with surprising strength. "What should we name her?" They discussed names for months without deciding. But looking at her daughter now, Lena knew exactly what felt right. "Rose, after my mother." "Rose Vance." Caleb tested it out. "I like it." "Rose Eleanor Vance," Lena amended, thinking of her uncle's kind wife. "She'll have family to be proud of on both sides." The first months with Rose were harder than Lena had expected. The baby cried constantly, refused to sleep for more than 2 hours at a stretch, and demanded feeding what felt like every 20 minutes. Lena was exhausted to the point of delirium, questioning every decision she made, convinced she was failing at motherhood just as she'd feared. Caleb did his best to help, taking the baby whenever he could, walking her around the house at 3 in the morning while Lena caught brief moments of sleep. But there were limits to what he could do, and Lena felt the weight of responsibility crushing her some days. "I can't do this," she told Sarah one afternoon near tears. "I'm not good at it. She cries all the time, and I don't know what she needs, and I feel like I'm drowning." "That's normal. Every new mother feels that way." Sarah took Rose from her arms, giving Lena a chance to breathe. "You're doing fine. Better than fine. The baby's healthy. She's growing. She's loved. That's what matters. But I'm so tired. and I snap at Caleb when he doesn't deserve it, and I can't remember the last time I felt like myself. You're not yourself right now. You're someone new. A mother. That takes time to adjust to. Sarah rocked Rose gently. Give yourself some grace, Lena. You survived things that would have broken most people. You can survive this too. Gradually, it got easier. Rose started sleeping longer stretches. Lena learned to read her daughter's different cries, to know when she was hungry versus tired versus just wanting comfort. And somewhere around month 3, she looked at Caleb across the cradle and realized they'd made it through the hardest part. We didn't completely mess this up, she said, surprised. Of course we didn't, though there's still plenty of time. That's not comforting. It's realistic. We'll mess up sometimes. Every parent does. But we'll fix it, and we'll keep going, and she'll turn out fine. He looked at their sleeping daughter. Better than fine, if she's anything like her mother. Winter came again, and this time Lena stayed inside with Rose while Caleb and the ranch hands managed the livestock. She'd expected to feel trapped, but instead she felt grateful. For warmth, for safety, for the simple pleasure of watching her daughter discover the world. Rose was alert and curious, tracking movement with intense focus, reaching for everything within range. Caleb was hopelessly smitten, spending every free moment with her, talking to her about ranch operations like she could understand. You know she has no idea what you're saying, right? Lena asked one evening, watching him explain cattle breeding to a 3-month-old. She's learning. Babies absorb everything. She's absorbing the fact that her father is slightly ridiculous. Good. She should know that early. He settled Rose against his shoulder. I want her to grow up knowing she can do anything. Run a ranch, go to college, travel the world, whatever she wants. No limits. Lena felt her throat tighten. You're going to spoil her completely. That's my right as a father. You can be the stern one who makes her eat vegetables. I'm going to spoil her too. We'll both be terrible at discipline. Then she'll run wild and free and we'll deal with the consequences. He looked at Lena with so much love it made her chest ache. We'll figure it out. We always do. The years that followed weren't easy, but they were good. Rose grew into a fierce, stubborn child who reminded Lena of herself at that age, questioning everything, refusing to accept because I said so as an answer, determined to do things her own way. She drove them both crazy and filled their lives with joy in equal measure. The ranch prospered. Caleb's careful management and Lena's inheritance combined to create something stable and successful. They expanded gradually, bought some adjacent land, built proper facilities for the hands. Red Hollow grew around them, adding new families, new businesses, slowly transforming from frontier settlement to actual town. Lena's relationship with the community evolved too. She'd never be one of the old-timers, would always be the woman who'd come from somewhere else. But she'd earned her place through sheer persistence and refusal to be driven out. People respected that, even if they didn't always like her. Sarah Coltrane finally got pregnant when Rose was 2, giving birth to twin boys who became Rose's constant companions and co-conspirators. Judge Holloway retired and spent his remaining years doing quiet good works around town, trying to atone for his wife's actions. Samuel Garrett rebuilt his ranch and became one of Caleb's closest friends, the two men bonding over shared struggles and hard-won success. Even Thomas Mercer found happiness, marrying a school teacher from Silver Ridge and starting a family of his own. Red Hollow wasn't perfect. There were still prejudices, still gossip, still people who judged too quickly and forgave too slowly. But it was home. And Lena had learned that home didn't have to be perfect to be worth fighting for. When Rose was 5, Lena took her to visit the Fairchilds in Philadelphia. It was Rose's first trip to a big city, and she was overwhelmed by the crowds and buildings and constant noise. But she loved meeting her extended family, especially her cousins who taught her city games and showed her indoor wonders she'd never seen. Do you wish you'd grown up here? Rose asked on their last night, looking out at the gaslit streets. No, Lena said honestly. I'm glad I ended up where I did. Even though it was hard? Especially because it was hard. The hard things teach you who you are. Rose considered this with the seriousness only 5-year-olds could muster. Will I have to do hard things? Probably. Everyone does eventually. Will you help me? Always. Me and your father both. That's what we're here for. They went home to Red Hollow, to Caleb and the ranch and the life they'd built. It wasn't the life Lena had imagined for herself as a girl. It was better, more real, earned rather than given. The years continued their steady march. Rose grew tall and capable, helping around the ranch, learning to ride before she could read, developing her father's quiet confidence and her mother's fierce determination. When she was 8, a brother joined her, a boy they named Thomas, after the man who'd helped them when they needed it most. Lena was older now, more sure of herself in ways that had nothing to do with circumstance. She'd learned that strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and doing what needed doing anyway. She'd learned that love wasn't a feeling, but a choice you made every day, over and over. She'd learned that belonging wasn't something given to you. It was something you claimed for yourself and defended when necessary. She'd learned that she was enough, that she'd always been enough even when people tried to convince her otherwise. One evening, when Rose was 12 and Thomas was 4, Lena sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Caleb came out and settled beside her, his presence as comfortable as breathing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come. I was just remembering the day I arrived here, how terrified I was, how certain I was that I'd made a terrible mistake. And now? Now I know it was the best decision I ever made. Answering your advertisement, getting on that stagecoach, choosing to stay when I could have left." She took his hand. "Choosing you. Every day I chose you. I chose you too. Best decision of my life." He kissed her temple. "Though I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was just solving a practical problem, finding someone to help with the ranch. And you got a wife who challenged you at every turn. I got a partner. Someone who stood with me instead of behind me. Someone who made me want to be better than I was." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm not good with words like this, but I want you to know you saved me, Lena. Before you came, I was just existing. You taught me how to live again. We saved each other. That's how this works." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play in the yard. Rose was teaching Thomas how to rope a fence post, demonstrating with the patience she'd inherited from Caleb. Thomas was trying his best, tongue sticking out in concentration, determined to master the skill. This was what they'd built. Not just a ranch or a home, but a family, a life, a future that belonged to them because they'd claimed it, fought for it, refused to let anyone take it away. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks and struggles, moments when giving up would have been simpler than pushing forward. Lena still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at unexpected loud noises, still carried the scars of what she'd survived. Caleb still had bad days when the war memories caught up with him, when he went quiet and distant and needed space to remember himself. But they'd learned to weather those storms together, to give each other grace on the hard days and celebrate the good ones, to forgive mistakes and try again. That was the thing about building a life. It wasn't about getting everything right the first time. It was about showing up, doing the work, making the hard choices, and trusting that the person beside you would do the same. "Mom," Rose called from the yard. "Come watch, Thomas almost got it." Lena stood, pulling Caleb up with her. They walked down to join their children, and Rose demonstrated her teaching technique while Thomas proudly showed off his improving skills. The 4 of them stayed out there until dark, working and laughing and being together. Later, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Lena stood at her bedroom window looking out at the land. This rough, beautiful, unforgiving place that had tested her and shaped her and ultimately accepted her. She'd come here running from one life and stumbled into another, one she'd had to fight for at every turn. But it was hers, truly hers, in a way nothing else had ever been. Caleb came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You all right?" "Better than all right. I'm happy." She leaned back against him. Actually, genuinely happy. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It's real. We made it real." Through sheer stubborn determination and refusing to quit when things got hard. We're quite a pair. The best kind of pair, the kind that doesn't give up on each other. Lena turned in his arms, looking up at the face she knew better than her own now. The lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his hair, the scars from old wounds and hard work, all of it familiar, all of it home. "I love you," she said. "I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, more than I did yesterday. I love you for who you are and who you've helped me become. I love you too, for all the same reasons and 100 more. He kissed her, slow and thorough. Thank you for taking a chance on a grumpy rancher's advertisement. Best gamble you ever made. Second best, she corrected. Best gamble was believing I deserved better and going to find it. Fair point. I'm just grateful you found it here. They stood together at the window, watching the stars emerge one by one over the darkened land. Somewhere out there, other people were struggling with their own battles, making their own hard choices, fighting for their own futures. Lena hoped they found the courage to keep going, the strength to stand their ground, the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go. She hoped they found what she'd found, not perfection, but something better, something real. Because that was the truth she'd learned in Red Hollow, the lesson written in scars and struggles and hard-won victories. Life didn't owe you happiness. It didn't owe you safety or comfort or easy answers. The world was harsh and unfair and full of people who'd try to break you if they could. But you didn't have to let them. You could choose to stand up, to fight back, to build something worth protecting and defend it with everything you had. You could choose love over fear, courage over comfort, growth over safety. You could choose to be more than what others decided you should be. And if you were very lucky, you'd find someone to stand beside you while you did it. Someone who saw your strength and your scars and loved you not despite them, but because of them. Someone who understood that the hardest battles weren't fought with weapons, but with daily choices to show up, to try, to keep building even when it would be easier to walk away. That was what Lena and Caleb had built here. Not just a ranch or a family, but a testament to the power of choosing each other, every day, in 100 small ways. Of refusing to be victims of their circumstances and becoming architects of their own lives instead. Years would pass. Rose would grow up and make her own choices, forge her own path. Thomas would follow, finding his own way in the world. The ranch would change, the town would evolve, and Lena and Caleb would grow old together, watching it all unfold. There would be more challenges, more setbacks and struggles. Life didn't stop testing you just because you'd already proven yourself, but they'd face it together the way they'd faced everything else, with grit and grace and the knowledge that they'd already survived the worst. Everything else was just details. On this night, though, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The children were safe and sleeping. The ranch was thriving. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility. Lena took one last look at the stars, then turned away from the window. Tomorrow would bring its own concerns, its own work, its own choices. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight she had everything she needed. She had a home she'd fought for, and a family she'd chosen, and a life she'd built from nothing but determination and hope. She had scars that proved she'd survived and strengths she'd discovered along the way. She had a partner who'd stood with her through the worst and celebrated with her through the best. She had enough. And in the end, that was the real victory. Not winning every battle or avoiding every hardship, but learning to recognize when you had enough. When the life you'd built, imperfect as it was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth waking up to every morning with gratitude instead of fear. Lena climbed into bed beside Caleb, his arm automatically coming around her in sleep. She closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the weight of contentment, the peace of belonging, the simple joy of being exactly where she was meant to be. She'd come to Red Hollow with nothing but a carpet bag and desperation. She'd stayed because of stubbornness and necessity. But somewhere along the way, necessity had become choice, and choice had become love. And love had become this life she'd never imagined possible. Not a perfect life, not an easy one, but hers, forged in fire and claimed through courage and defended every day through the simple act of refusing to give up. And that, Lena thought, as sleep finally claimed her, was more than enough. It was everything. The frontier had tested her. The town had judged her. The world had tried to break her. But here she was, still standing, still fighting, still choosing joy over bitterness and hope over despair. Here she was, home.